Good evening. The September 18th, 2024 Arlington County Board of Zoning Appeals is now in session. Good evening and welcome. I am Richard Kaplan, Chair of the Board of Zoning Appeals. The board is made up of 5 citizens appointed by the Circuit Court. Tonight, in addition to myself, we have members Inta Malice, Portia Clark, who will hopefully be joining us shortly, and Judy Freshman and Carol McCoskry, who is joining us virtual tonight. Also present is the professional staff of Arlington County Zoning, including Debbie Albert, Deputy Zoning Administrator, Cedric Sutherland, Acting Board of Zoning Appeals Coordinator, Brett Goldberg, BZA Associate Planner, and I believe Meg Ryan, Associate Planner, and Stephen Rissy, Zoning Prim Supervisor, are joining us virtually. Oh. Okay, so no, they are not joining us virtually. I thought I heard her voice earlier. To avoid disruptions, we ask that you please place your mobile devices in silent mode. Before we begin tonight's hearing, I will discuss the board's powers and procedures for tonight's hearing. The board's powers are prescribed in the Code of Virginia and are set forth in further detail in the county's zoning ordinance adopted by the county board. The Board of Zoning Appeals does not have the power to rezone property or to amend the regulations set forth in the ordinance. That authority rests solely with the county board. This board does have the authority to do 3 things. First, the BZA can approve use permits that allow modifications of placement requirements for structures on 1 and 2 family lots where there is no option in the zoning ordinance to allow such modifications. In order to approve a use permit, the Arlington zoning ordinance requires that this board find that the proposal will not adversely affect the health or safety of persons residing in the neighborhood, will not be detrimental to the public welfare or injurious to property or improvements in the neighborhood, and will not be in conflict with the purposes of the master plans and land use and zoning related policies of the county. In making these findings, the BZA shall consider whether the modification will promote compatibility of the development with the surrounding neighborhood because of the structure's overall size and placement are similar to those of the structures on the property surrounding the lot in question, and whether the modification will help preserve natural landform, historical features, and/or significant trees and foliage. When approving use permits, the Board of Zoning Appeals may impose conditions that it deems necessary and in the public interest, including but not limited to the duration of the use permit. This board does not have the authority to grant use permits to modify requirements for expanded housing option developments. Second, the BZA can grant variances from the specific requirements of the zoning ordinance. When granting variances, the burden of proof is on the applicant to prove by a preponderance of the evidence that the strict application of the ordinance would unreasonably restrict the utilization of the property, and the need for the variance would not be shared generally by other properties, and such variance is not contrary to the purposes of the ordinance. Or the strict application of the ordinance would unreasonably restrict the utilization of the property, or that granting the variance would alleviate a hardship due to a physical condition relating to the property or improvements thereon at the time of the effective date of the ordinance, or alleviate a hardship by granting a reasonable modification to a property or improvement thereon requested by or on behalf of a person with a disability. In all variance cases, the property for which the variance is being requested was acquired in good faith, and any hardship was not created by the applicant. That the variant granted will not be of substantial detriment to adjacent property and nearby properties in the proximity of the geographic area. That the condition or situation of the property concerned is not of so general or reoccurring a nature as to make reasonably practical the adoption of an amendment to the ordinance. That the granting of the variance will not result in a use that is not otherwise permitted on the property or change the zoning classification of the property, and that the relief or remedy obtained through the variance is not available through a special exception process as provided for under the zoning ordinance or subdivision ordinance. Third, the BZA shall hear and decide appeals of the zoning administrator or from any order, requirement, decision, or determination made by any other administrative officer in the administration or enforcement of Title 15.2, Article 7 of the Code of Virginia. In exercising its powers, the board may reverse, affirm, wholly in part, or may modify an order, requirement, decision, or determination appealed. The determination of the administrative officer or zoning administrator shall be presumed correct by the BZA. The appellant has the burden of proof to rebut that presumption of correctness by a preponderance of the evidence. The board shall consider any applicable ordinance, laws, and regulations in making its decision and must base our judgment on whether the administrative officer was correct. The concurring vote of a majority of the membership of the board shall be necessary to reverse any order or determination. Now on to tonight's hybrid hearing. For those who are participating in the room, on the front of the table, you will find a QR code linking to a copy of the application package, including the staff report for each case before us this evening. For those participating virtually, a copy of each application package can be found on the Arlington County BZA website. There is also a link in the chat for the application packages, I hope. I recommend that if you have not yet seen that report for your case, that you review that report before your case is called. If you are attending virtually and lose connectivity, please reconnect with us by phone. If you are attending via Teams, please keep yourself muted and cameras off until called upon. Turn off the sound on any other devices around you to minimize interference. When called upon to speak, please turn on your camera and unmute yourself by clicking on the microphone icon that is located in the meeting command bar. County staff does not have the ability to unmute you. The meeting chat is active for technical support assistance only. The meeting chat should not be used for discussion, public comments, questions about agenda items, or requests for more information. All public comments must be shared verbally or have been previously provided in writing for the record during the assigned public testimony period. This evening, staff will call each case and will provide a brief staff report and recommendation. Next, the board members will ask questions of staff they may have. Applicants or their representative will be given an opportunity to make comments to support the application or appeal. Next, all speakers for the item will be called. Speakers must fill out a speaker slip online or is available on the front of the table in the room. After we hear from speakers for and against the proposal, the board may permit the applicant a brief opportunity to clarify any points. The board may ask questions of any speakers, but will not permit any cross-examination or direct questioning by others. For tonight's hearing, this board has deemed the following time limits for speakers to be sufficient: 20 minutes for applicants of appeals, 5 minutes for applicants of use permits and variances, 3 minutes for representative of organizations, and 2 minutes for individuals as sufficient. After the board has gathered all information we need and have discussed the case, we will decide the matter by voting on a motion duly made and seconded. A majority is needed to approve any motion. Please be respectful of the time allotted. This is a public forum and tonight's meeting will be recorded and posted to the county's website. All information associated with tonight's meeting, whether spoken or written, is subject to the Freedom of Information Act requirements. Any appeal from the decision of this board must be made to the circuit court in accordance with state law. After your case of interest is heard, you are welcome to stay for the balance or leave at your convenience. Tonight, I have a request from a BZA member to participate virtually. Virginia law requires there be an in-person quorum, and as such, I will note that we have an in-person quorum for the record. Ms. McCroskey has requested to participate virtually because she is traveling out of the jurisdiction, which I believe is required to be 50 miles or more. Ms. McCroskey, can you please certify that you can hear me?
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
I cannot hear you. I assume our friendly tech people in the back will work on that. Can you try again?
Can you hear me now?
Better.
The microphone was blue before on my screen, and now it's black.
There we go. Much better.
Okay.
Okay. And so for all of us in the room, I will certify that we can hear you. Lastly, before we begin, a quick administrative matter to address. My understanding is that Mr. Bowen is temporarily unavailable to fulfill his duties as the secretary to the BZA. As such, I would like to seek unanimous consent from my colleagues to appoint Mr. Sutherland as acting secretary to the BZA until Mr. Bowen can resume his duties. Hearing no objections, Mr. Sutherland is so appointed.
Thank you.
I believe that's all the business that we have. Ms. Malice.
Did you ask if they can hear you in the back?
Can everyone in the back hear me? Excellent.
Oh.
Ooh, now they really can. Mr. Sutherland, can you please call our first case?
Yes. The first case is V-11962-24-UP-1, a use permit request by Francis Durkin on behalf of Dylan and Jessica Connor, the owners, to permit a left side setback of 4.3 feet to the patio and foundation wall instead of 8 feet to the patio and foundation wall as required, and to permit a total aggregate side yard width of 14.9 feet instead of 18 feet as required, for the rebuilding of an existing non-conforming foundation wall with the patio above to an existing one-family detached dwelling in the R6 zoning district on the premises known as 1911 North Roosevelt Street in the Arlington East Falls Church Civic Association. Staff recommends that the board adopt the attached proposed resolution granting the use permit request with conditions. The staff would also like to note that there's a supplemental material for this case that came in after the application packet was assembled and printed, which is a support letter from Paul and Lori West, who previously objected at the August 7th hearing. Their adjacent neighbors to the north, their letter updated to support the request due to the applicant's revised drawings.
Mr. Chairman. I just wanted to confirm that the supplemental is 1915. Is that correct address? My concern just generally is that most of the neighborhood input, which we put so much emphasis on, have the addresses blacked out and makes them, in my view, pretty useless, because we're very concerned about immediate neighbors all the way around. And if we have a half a dozen people who say we think it's great or we hate it, but we don't know where they are, it's difficult. So I'm assuming if they change their mind, I think that they, in 1915, were the ones who were most impacted and objected last time.
Let me take a look at that. Pull it up. Sorry.
Paul, just to confirm, Paul and Lori West do live at 1915 North Roosevelt Street.
Okay.
Thank you,
But we
Brad.
don't have information on some of the other neighborhood comments.
Yeah,
Maybe the applicant can help us, but that really makes it more difficult for us to evaluate how we feel about the application.
In the future, can we request that when staff receives emails like this, if there are no addresses, that you seek them out, reply and ask them for their address? Would that be doable?
Yes, that's doable.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
May I comment? Can you hear me?
Who?
I'm Dylan Connor, sorry. I'm the.
Yeah, sir, we'll get to you in a minute.
Apologize.
Thank
sorry.
you. Ms. Malice.
just want to confirm, is this mic on? No?
Yes.
Yes. There was, amongst the feedback from neighbors, there was quite a bit of discussion about a property at 1907, where we're talking about subdivision plats and the purchase of the property. Is that relevant at all to this case?
Sorry, I'll just have to take a look at the staff report. This is Meg Ryan's staff report, who's
Right.
out today, so I just want to double check the outreach that
I
you're.
assume that it's extraneous, but since it's in the staff report, I'd like to confirm that it's not relevant to.
Yep. And what was that address? What was the address again that you were interested in?
1907, it's the neighbor on the right side.
The other side.
We talk about plats and getting subdivisions, making purchases.
subdivision is relevant to. Sorry, just to clarify, what was the comment in it that you were referring to? I think we found the 1950.
So there's references to subdivision, there's references to requesting a plat, and there's references to the sale of a property. Is any of that relevant to this case?
What's the page number? Sorry, what's the page number for that, Ms. Malice?
Let me,
Yeah, I see, yes, I'm looking at it, and
it's sort of.
it seems like they were having a private conversation about potentially purchasing, or maybe the purchase of that lot. It seems like the Connors responded to Mr. Flannery
Right.
about they were interested in possibly purchasing that lot, but I don't think it has any bearing on here, on this case.
Yeah, 22 and earlier, right?
Yes, page,
Potentially purchasing and building our new home.
page 21,
And-
22.
Just a confirmation, I read it to be extraneous.
Yes,
We can-
it looks like the gentleman responded to the Connors expressing frustration about permitting and possibly making an offer to purchase his lot. But it seems like it's not germane to this
Okay,
review.
thank you.
You're welcome.
Is the applicant with us? I believe he had his
Yes.
hand up. Would you like to
Yes.
speak to your application?
I can confirm that the back conversation and the email that I forwarded from Mr. Flannery was irrelevant to this action. We were interested in potentially talking about purchasing that lot, but I don't believe that's germane. I had just referenced that email conversation to seek his input on the proposed action we're talking about here today. And I do have all the addresses in the original emails. Those were edited by the professional staff, I think, potentially for privacy. I'm not sure if that's relevant or not, but I do have those and I can forward them. I have them here. If there's a relevant email address, I can forward them immediately.
Mr. Chairman.
I don't have much to say except for the fact that we were able to work out the concerns that Mr. and Mrs. West had next door, and they withdraw their concerns, and we have letters of support from the neighbors immediately behind us and to either side of us, as well as other neighbors on the street that fronts our house. If you look at the plat, there's a T-junction that comes into our house, and I have all of the other letters of support came from people on that street. That's all I have to say, unless there's further questions from me.
Thank you. Do my colleagues have any questions for the applicant?
Mr. Chairman.
Ms. Mellis?
If I give you names, can you give me addresses?
It might take me a second to reference them, but yes, if that's appropriate, I want to make sure that I'm not stepping on any
Those are
privacy
public.
concerns.
Those are public.
Then yes, ma'am, I probably can.
Victoria Singer?
Let's see. Apologize. Yes, here. One moment. I have a couple different emails they've sent over.
Okay, I don't want to hold this up, but.
That is Oh, she's down the street. She would be on. She would not be on. She would not be of the immediate concern. I don't actually have her address. It's the one person who did not provide their address to the department. I'm sorry.
Walter and Megan Extory?
Ekstrom. Yeah, they are at. They are at. Oh wow, they didn't apply theirs either. Oh yeah, 6408 19th Street North.
Someone named Kent?
That's Kent Flannery. He is 1907 to my immediate southern neighbor.
1907. Oh, that's the subdivision? Okay.
Yes, ma'am. That's the
Okay.
neighbor immediately to my southern neighbor.
John Rogers?
John Rogers is, I believe he is 1912. Can you help me verify? Yeah, he's at 1912 Kitana.
Okay. And someone named Darren?
Darren is at directly behind me. I think it's 1908. Kitana.
Okay, thank you so much. That's very helpful.
Thank you. Anything else from my colleagues? Just for the record, we're in the possession of the supplemental material. The plat reflects this agreement, is that correct? Sir? Mr. Dillon?
Excuse me?
I'm sorry, Miss Dillon, Mr. Connor. The agreement that you came to with your neighbors to stay within the existing footprint, I just want to confirm that that is what is in the plat in the application package.
Yes, yeah, that is the existing footprint we have is existing structure, the existing non-conforming structure. That is what you have platted in this package.
I was not here last month, so I was not privy to the hearings from last
Understood.
month. So I just wanted to
Yep.
confirm that.
Yes,
Anything
sir.
further from my colleagues? Would anyone like to make a motion?
Mr. Chairman?
Ms. Malice?
Not ready. I'm not ready. I move that the Board of Zoning Appeals approve the attached proposed resolution granting use permit V-11962-24-UP-1, subject to the conditions listed.
A motion made by Ms. Malice, seconded by Ms. Clark. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, I will call the roll. Ms. Malice?
Aye.
Ms. Freshman?
Aye.
Ms. Clark? Aye. Ms. McCroskey?
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Motion for approval passes 5-0.
Thank you.
Good luck with your project. Mr. Sutherland, can you please call the next case?
The next case is V-11964-24-UP-1, a use permit request by Stephen Tenter on behalf of Stephen Schoen and Irene Wilson, the owners, to permit a separation of 6 feet from the building wall to a detached accessory building instead of 8 feet of separation from the building wall as required, and to permit the street setback of 16.6 feet to the porch column instead of 21 feet to the porch column as required. One column addition to an existing non-conforming porch, and a new rear addition to an existing one-family detached dwelling in the R6 zoning district on the premises known as 801 North Jackson Street in the Ashland Heights Civic Association. Staff recommends that the board adopt the attached proposed resolution granting the use permit request with conditions.
Thank you. Do my colleagues have questions for staff? Is the applicant with us? Welcome.
How are you? I think
Your
you,
name?
is that on?
Yeah, it's a red light comes on. It's a little slow to come on. It's on right now. You should go ahead.
Up here, thank you.
Yes.
If you remember from last
I'm sorry,
month's-
can you introduce yourself?
Oh, I'm sorry, Stephen Tinter, I'm the agent for the applicant.
Thank you.
Cook Brothers Design, Build, Remodeling,
Thank you.
sure. And I have the homeowner with me tonight, so.
Stephen Shaw.
So if you recall from last month's hearing, when we first came to the proposed application, we had an issue with the survey plat that was pointed out by the zoning office. They said that the detached structure that existed on the property was just over the 560 square feet that's required for an 8-foot separation. So they said that what we were really asking for was instead of six feet towards an 8-foot separation, they said that it was considered to be a 2-story addition or 2-story structure that required 15 feet. So we went back and at their request, they had actually suggested that if we can get a more accurate plat that showed it under the 560 square feet, it would be a less onerous application. They might be apt to support the application. So we had our surveyor come out, and what we had found was, I think that, the surveyor defaults to the tenths of a foot on their surveys. When we measured it, it came up under the 560, so we asked them to measure it to the 100th. And when they measured it to the 100th of an inch, it comported with our numbers, and it was just under. So we put it back with the zoning office, and that's where the deferral came. And they've now come back and said that they are in support of it because they were able to find other. Originally, they weren't able to find other houses in the neighborhood that had the 15-foot separation with a structure that was 6 foot to the 15-foot separation, but they were able to find other structures that were even closer than what we were asking for, so they felt it was compatible once we figured out that the structure was under 560 square feet.
Thank you. Do my colleagues have questions for this applicant?
Mr. Chairman? So the structure didn't,
Excuse me, it looks like Carol had a question.
Oh, Ms. McCroskey, would you like to?
Yeah, someone else could go first, I don't mind, but is there a reason why this addition can't be built to the zoning requirements? As I read it, I believe, am I correct that the new rear, this is just a couple questions, so I don't have to keep on, but does the new rear addition require that use permit for the separation? It's not part of the existing building that requires that. And so I'm just wondering why a use permit is appropriate and why this isn't something that's just a violation or a deviation from the ordinance.
Would you care to hear from me from a design perspective or from the owner?
Either is fine.
We actually had looked at it originally when the owners came to us. They had an architect who actually designed closer than what we're proposing, and we had told them that that it was going to require the use permit and that we were trying to find the best compromise for the design. And we pulled it back. We tried to design it within the parameters to gain the 8 foot, because that's what we thought at the time. And what wound up happening is, the purpose of building the addition was that the house, there's a lot of square footage, but it's very cut up right now. And like the kitchen is non-functional, and it just doesn't flow right. When we tried to pull the addition back to meet the 8 feet, we still wound up with problems with clearances around the kitchen countertops that we couldn't quite get the flow to work right in there. So we did look at that, and we pulled it back from what the original architect had designed, because we thought it was not as onerous of a request. So we did try to find kind of a happy medium there so that they weren't left with another non-functional kitchen space.
I can also just add that our house was built in 1929, and we are trying to keep as much of the 1929 aspect of the house as possible. It's Jackson Street. I don't know if you know the crazy Halloween street, but we're part of that. And we want to keep as much of the 1929 nature since 1929, there have been a series of extensions on the back of it over the past 40 years or so. And speaking frankly, the extensions are bad and kind of falling apart. So we're just getting rid of all the old extensions and building something new in that footprint.
Did you have anything further?
No, that's fine. Thank you.
Miss Malice,
That's helpful.
did you still have questions?
So do I understand the drawings didn't change, just the measurements did?
That's correct. It was just the survey plat that we originally submitted one, and then the new one came in just a little too late to get it to be distributed for everybody. So the only thing that's changed on the application is the survey plat.
The old one rounded up. Just rounding up was put us over.
Got it. I'm just,
We are here asking for inches.
Excuse me?
We are here asking for inches.
Well, that was the original, between the 560 square feet, we're still required to get the use
Right.
permit for the 2 feet, but like I said, I think going to 6 feet, where the requirement is 8 is a lot less onerous, like I said, than
Right,
going
it's
that
two-
close
we're-
to
I
a
mean,
15-foot required
We're here
separation.
for 2/10 of a foot, right?
Yeah.
Okay, just making sure I'm not reading this wrong. Ms. Malice, are you through? Do you need more time? Motions?
So
Or-
I'm
Miss-
sorry.
Go ahead.
Yeah, so we're here for 2 feet variation in the required building separation,
Two,
right? It's not 2/10.
right, 2 feet.
oh,
Sorry,
That's correct.
Mr. Chairman, I just want to make sure we're clear on that.
wait,
That
hold on. Yep,
it should be an 8-foot separation now that they've gotten the numbers down. It should be an 8-foot separation. They want a 6-foot. So it's not inches, it's 2 feet.
I believe the inches was, in terms of the plat, was previously at like 560.19 inches.
Yes, that change is small, but
And it was like a matter of inches to get from that to underneath.
15-foot
Yeah.
allowable to the 8-foot.
That is correct, but it's still before it was a bigger variation from the ordinance, and it's now smaller, but it's still 2 feet.
Correct.
what am I missing? So I'm looking at the summary for the request, 8.8 feet to the building wall instead of 9 feet? 8.8 feet to the building wall instead of 9 feet? Am I looking at the wrong thing?
64? Are you looking at 64?
I am not looking at 64. Wow, I don't know how I did that. Excuse me. That's why
Mr. Chairman, while you...
Yes, please.
So to Ms. McCroskey's point, I'm looking at the kitchen layout. And the kitchen layout, I'm not sure how that relates to the back.
So where the proposed kitchen layout gets moved from kind of more from the side of the house
Into
into
the
that back addition. And what wound up happening by pulling that rear wall back to create the 8-foot separation, it pushes kind of that entryway and the stairwell closer to the peninsula that's there. And it makes the passage
Let's see.
between there, it's unpassable. So you have to then move that peninsula back, which kind of crunches everything down. We have a very modest island in there, but we couldn't make that any smaller, and so it just made the kitchen that
So
much smaller.
you're talking about the distance between the entry stairs and the end of that
That's
the
correct.
leg,
Yeah, by pulling
the-
it. Because that
okay.
side of would be what we would pull back to create the 8-foot separation.
Got it. And so if you took another 2 feet out of there, you would probably, I don't have an exact measurement, but it would be tight.
It was, yeah. I mean, it brought us down less than the 3-foot required, so we had to move the whole kitchen, like shrink the whole kitchen, which made it,
Got
in
it.
essence, like another small galley kitchen that really wasn't very functional. So
Got it.
We did look at that. That was our first position when we met with the homeowners and we explained the issue of the use permit. We said, well, let's see if we can find something that we don't need to go through that process first. And it couldn't, so we kind of played with it back and forth and we landed at the 2 feet. We didn't think it was too much of an ask because of what else is in the neighborhood.
Okay, thank you. That's very helpful.
Thank you.
I am, sorry, you're on another application
We are.
tonight.
Yes.
And so I had miraculously clicked on the wrong one and saw your name, and so, but I think we're good now. Sorry about that.
No problem.
Thank you for correcting me, though. Just, I don't think we have any speakers. No speakers? We have no speakers for this item?
No speakers.
Motion?
Discussion with the board or motion? Ms.
Go
Clark?
ahead. Go ahead.
I move that the Board of Zoning Appeals adopt the attached proposed resolution granting the use permit V-11964-24-UP-1, subject to the conditions listed.
Second.
A motion made by Ms. Clark, seconded by Ms. Freshman. Is there any further discussion? Ms. McCruskey?
Can I? Yeah,
Please.
I'm probably gonna vote for this because of the age of the house. I do think there's some question as to whether this is something that, just to get a bigger kitchen, and I understand otherwise we have a very limited kitchen. There's, our old Arlington houses have very limited kitchens, and that's why I think I will vote for it. But in general, I think we really need to be careful about these things. But I think in this case, with a very old house that's pretty squeezed, I will vote for it.
Thank you. Any further discussion?
I would concur with Ms. McCroskey.
Thank you. I will call the roll. Ms. Malice?
Aye.
Ms. Freshman?
Aye.
Ms. Clark?
Aye.
Ms. McCruskey?
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Motion to grant this use permit passes 5-0. This concludes the matter. Good luck.
Thank you very much.
Mr. Sutherland, can you call the third case, please?
Yes. Make sure I have the right one.
I will try and get this one right.
All right, me too. All right, the next case is V-1969-24-UP-1, a use permit request by Highland Street LLC, doing business as Alair Homes on behalf of Richard Hoffacker. Please excuse if I mispronounce your name. The owner, to permit a street setback of 15.1 feet to the building wall, 13.6 feet to the building eaves, 13.6 feet to the bay window, and 17.2 feet to the AC units instead of 25 feet to the building wall, and 21 feet to the building eaves, 23.5 feet to the to the bay window, 25 feet to the AC units is required, all from North Florida Street, and to permit a rear setback is 7.5 feet to the AC units instead of 10 feet to the AC units as required, for a two-story addition with a garage, AC units, a bay window to an existing one-family detached dwelling on a corner lot in the R6 zoning district on the premises known as 622 North Florida Street in the Bluemont Civic Association. Staff recommends that the board adopt the attached proposed resolution granting the use permit request with conditions.
Thank you. Mr. Sutherland, my understanding is that this one deadlocked last month, and so no action was taken. Is that correct?
Brett, can you confirm for me, please?
Let me double check the BZA minutes last month to confirm that information.
Thank you. In the meantime, do my colleagues have questions for staff?
Mr. Chairman?
Ms. Malice?
Has there been any change to this project since we saw it last month?
Perhaps we can ask the applicant.
Hello, everyone. This is Richard Kopacker. Yeah, I can confirm we did not change like the design plan. Probably the only thing that changed from the last time is just additional outreach with the neighbors.
Thank you.
And I can confirm that August 7th hearing was a 2-2 vote.
Thank you. Did you have anything else, Ms. Malice? Would you like to speak further to your application?
Yes, yeah, I would like to do that. So I just wanted to kind of walk everyone through the process we went through and kind of how we got to the design we're presenting in front of the board. So we began our project maybe late 2023, reviewed plans and several options with Alaire and our architect, and selected a design that we felt best met our goals of an open floor plan, maintaining the backyard, and most importantly, retaining 2 large mature trees that we have on the Bluemont side of the lot. We were advised that any expansion in that direction would have to result in tree removal. We were informed that there's precedence in our neighborhood for a 15-foot setback deviation. Most of these are corner lots, just like ours, that are outlined in the report that is presented for you. I would also note that, we're along Bluemont Drive. 4 of the 5 closest corner lots to us, they also have some kind of varying setback variance to their front, to the similar side as we do. I would note they are not mentioned in the staff report, but there is a significant amount of precedence in our neighborhood. We started the outreach process in July. We explained about how we were building an addition along Florida Street that would require a 15-foot setback approval. Walked the neighbors through everything and got signatures from the 5 adjacent properties. Later, about 10 days later, we learned that one of our neighbors had withdrawn support. I have since visited them twice, just to kind of walk them through the plans in more detail. And I've gotten verbal support directly from the neighbor, but she won't provide written support, and that's primarily because her non-resident sister is a co-owner, and she's kind of unwavering and not willing to compromise with us. So that's kind of where we are today.
Thank you. Do my colleagues have questions for the applicant?
Mr. Chairman?
Ms. Malice?
You just spoke about a compromise. Had you offered a compromise?
I was willing to work with them, but really the plan that we put forward is the best for what our objectives are, and they just don't want to budge on their position.
Thank you.
Discussion with the board. Mr. Sutherland, can you bring up the tax map on page? I don't have page numbers. 8 on the application package. So I reviewed this one in some detail, and I have some concerns about the compatibility. In my opening remarks, I gave the standards that the county board for use permits require us to consider, and part of that is the size and placement are similar to those structures on the properties surrounding the lot in question. And in this case, it looks like the North Florida Street on both sides of that street all have the same setback from the tax map. And even on Bluemont Drive, they clearly have variances on Bluemont Drive, or those houses were built prior to the zoning ordinance. But it seems like this is a neighborhood in which setbacks on North Florida, Bluemont, and I don't know the names of the two other streets, south and parallel to Florida and north and parallel to Florida. It seems like those entire blocks, for the most part, are, all maintaining that same setback. And here we're talking about a use permit for this corner lot on North Florida and Bluemont to, to exceed that in the setback. And to me, I can't say that this is unusual, but I don't remember like a time looking at these maps where the neighborhood is as uniform as we see here. And I also wanted to note that staff's compatibility list, none of them are even on the tax map within the surrounding properties. They're in the neighborhood, but not the surrounding properties. So I would be interested in what my colleagues, where my colleagues are going with this. But I'm not sure I could support this one.
So I had I last time when this came before us, I did not vote for it, and I have the same feeling that this is just changing the setbacks there. I understand the applicant, and I mean, I think it's a good thing to try to preserve trees, but we also have a situation here where in the event this was approved and this addition was built, someday a by right addition could be built on that side where the trees are. I mean, I don't know that we have any guarantee that that's ever gonna, those trees in that area on that side are going to be protected. So that's part of my concern that, and it's unfortunate the applicant I know has put a lot of effort and I'm sure money into getting ready for this, but I just don't think that this changing these setback standards in these ways is doing anything to keep the, that's to be consistent with the zoning policies, which are the standard setbacks that we have. And we're not going to have any way to ensure that this lot remains that way. So that's my position on this one.
Thank you. Colleagues?
Am I able to speak up more on additional things, please?
No, I think unless my colleagues would like to hear further, I think the discussion is with the board.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
I also want to note that we have additional speakers for this item.
Oh, I'm so sorry. Thank you, Mr. Goldberg. Is Ms. Smith with us?
I'm not seeing Ms. Smith in the online chat, so we might be okay.
So I will have predicted that then. Do my colleagues have any, Ms. Clark or Ms. Malice, anything further?
I associate myself with Ms. McCroskey's comments and with the chairs.
Mr. Chairman.
Ms. Freshman?
I think one of the issues, I actually like the application generally, but I think one of the issues is that this is considered the side. And if you look at the tax map, it already appears to be a little closer to the street, the current footprint, which makes it challenging. And I know that we did suggest it last time that the addition be on the Bluemont side. which I guess would be the front. Challenging, corner lots are always challenging. And I guess that was an issue that didn't work with the interior circulation or the proposed uses. But I think it's unfortunate because I like the general intent of the proposal, but I do understand the issues of what can go forward, and also the issues of the most adjacent neighbor, which I think, have to be considered as well. I don't know if the missing speaker was that person, but that would have helpful to hear that.
Thank you, Ms. Frischman. Ms. Clark?
I guess I was just looking for, was there a question about the survey with this, or? Because I know we had some concerns with the one that was opposing, and I thought there was some changes, and one withdrew, but then now she's still supporting the sister. So I guess I was one that was supporting it, but I was hoping to get more info, or if they had any other conversations with the sister that was opposing, who I believe is Ms. Smith.
I believe the applicant said that he had tried to have further conversation, but nothing was fruitful from that. We have a hand, and I can't see who it is. Mr. Goldberg.
I believe that's from Ms. McCoskey.
Ah, sorry. Ms. McCroskey.
My apologies.
You're so small
I
up
think
there.
I just didn't take that down from before.
Oh, okay.
Sorry.
Thank you.
That's fine.
So would anyone of my colleagues like to make a motion? I am prepared to do so if I have some edits. So I'm happy to do it if get to the page. So I'm going to run through a couple changes to the proposed motion, and then we'll take it from there. Do I make the motion first, or do I do that?
Go ahead and make the motion.
I move that the Board of Zoning Appeals deny the use permit V-11969-24-UP-1. And on the second whereas, strike out the word not. On the fourth whereas, strike out the word compatible and replace it with incompatible. And in the now therefore be it resolved paragraph, replace the word approves with denies and remove subject to the following.
And everything that follows.
And everything that follows. Thank you.
I think that's a motion, I'll second it.
Ms. Frischman?
I don't have anything to look at, so can you just give me a general sense of what you're doing?
So I'm switching the proposed resolution from adopt to deny. And in the, I wanted to leave the first whereas, where it, the finding is will not affect adversely the health or safety of the persons residing. I wanted to change the second whereas that it will be detrimental to the public welfare. It will be detrimental to the public welfare or injurious to property or improvements in the neighborhood. And then leave the will not be in conflict with the purposes of the master plan, but it is incompatible with the development of the surrounding neighborhood. Right, so I wasn't prepared to make the finding of conflict with the purposes of the master plans. So we have a motion made by the chair, seconded by Ms. Malice. Is there any further discussion? I will call the roll. Ms. Malice?
Aye.
Ms. Frischman?
No.
Ms. Clark?
No.
Ms. McCroskey?
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Motion to deny passes 3-2. Mr. Sutherland, can you please call the next case?
Yes, the next case is V-1190-24-VA. It should say VA-2. A variance request by Tad Lunger of Arlington Land Use Group on behalf of Washington Golf and Country Club, Inc., the owner, to permit construction of a structure with net poles measuring up to 66.8 feet tall instead of 35 feet tall as required for new net poles for a golf course in the Arlington zoning district on the premises known as 3017 North Glebe Road. Staff recommends that the board adopt the attached proposed resolution approving the use permit request with conditions. And there are no speakers for this item.
Thank you. Do my colleagues have questions for staff on this variance?
I have one question. Is that, this is a variance, not a use permit? I'm sorry, it's just that the documents are incorrect because they have UP. Is that correct? This is a variance, not a use
Yes,
permit.
it is a variance. The staff report does reflect the variance. The slide is incorrect, and that it says UP.
Okay,
It
thank
should
you.
be a variance.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks.
I believe,
Actually see those.
I believe the applicant's representative is with us.
Yep.
Okay, are we ready?
Yep.
Okay, great. Okay, good evening, Chairman Kaplan, members of the BZA. My name is Tad Lunger with the Arlington Land Use Group, here tonight on behalf of Washington Golf, the applicant. Next slide. By way of some context and explanation, over the last several years, our neighbors brought the issue of projectiles leaving the golf course in one small section, one small location, to Washington Golf's attention, which prompted Washington Golf to reach out to the Arlington County Zoning Division to discuss the possibility of raising netting heights at that location for safety and welfare purposes. Uncertain as to the appropriate process to allow addressing this safety and welfare concern, the applicant was encouraged to embark on a multi-year process to determine the best course of action with various components of the Arlington County government. After about 2 years of working with county zoning staff, planning staff, the county manager's office, the director of planning, the county attorney's office, and the zoning administrator, it was determined for us that they felt the correct and supportable path forward was to seek approval of a variance from this body, the Board of Zoning Appeals. This 2-year period involved discussions with our neighbors, the hiring of engineering consultants, and a lot of time, effort, and expense by the applicant. This process proved out that due to the extreme variations in grade and topography at this location, that the solution necessary to remedy this safety and welfare issue is to raise certain poles for safety netting at certain spot elevations to make them effective. We are now here tonight with the full support and encouragement of our neighboring properties, the full Donaldson Run Civic Association, Marymount University, county government, and our applicant organization to seek approval of this variance request. Next slide. Next slide. Next slide, please. As you already know, the site is located in the northwest Arlington, in between Glebe and Military Road, occupying about 130 acres of land area. It has been an operating club for well over a century and since before zoning existed in Arlington County. Today, the site is located within an existing R10 district. Next slide. Here's the location of the portion of the site we are here to discuss tonight, which sits along the border of the Donaldson Run Civic Association and backs to the Country Club View subdivision off of North 26th Street. Next slide. Actually, could you go back a slide? Yeah. Could you go back a slide again? There you go. This is a zoom in of that portion of the site and the properties affected by insufficient safety netting heights. Next slide. As you can see from this aerial, There is a substantial grove of existing mature trees that runs along the property line between the existing poles and netting and the affected adjoining properties. The elevation along this portion of the safety netting drops precipitously into a natural gorge area between the properties. Next slide. Because this entire area of Arlington is located within an R10 zoning district, the maximum building height zoning applies to these structures is only 35 feet. Next slide. Having had our engineers study the varying and extreme grade changes of the course, it was determined mathematically and through engineering studies that the average elevation of the top of the netting needed to be around 330 feet ASE to be safely effective at this location. Next slide. Okay. As you can see from this slide, due to the severe changes in elevation, a maximum spot structure height of only 35 feet will not achieve the 330-foot ASE effective height that is necessary for the safety and welfare of adjoining properties. At the location shown, this would require a varied netting height of up to 67 feet to reach the 330-foot ASE safe netting height. Next slide. For some additional context, here is a view toward the netting from inside the property toward the precipice of this area of extreme grade change and the affected properties beyond. Next slide. Okay. Do we have a little more time to address the changing? Okay. For some additional context, here is a view toward the netting from the houses within the context of the large grove of trees rising out of the gorge behind the houses that are affected. Next slide. Okay, this slide clarifies which poles, may I continue?
Yeah, please.
Okay. This slide clarifies which poles we are asking for the increase in height, which are limited to just 6 poles as shown in their existing locations here in the area of extreme grade fluctuation. Next slide. As you can see from this slide, the pole locations are a considerable distance from the property lines and on the other side of the gorge behind the grove of mature trees from the affected properties. Next slide. Based on these variations in grade, additional necessary pole heights range from 5 to 31 feet, depending on a variety of factors studied by our engineering team. Next slide. Here is a visual scaled representation of the additional requested height in context with existing conditions. This shows the maintenance of an average safe height of 330 feet ASE at the top of each pole as compared to what is there today. Again, this shows the 4 affected properties who we are here tonight with their encouragement and support, a record of which you have in your package for this evening, as well as the support of the Donaldson Run Civic Association and Marymount University, whose athletes use this portion of the course for collegiate practice. Next slide. As the BZA is fully aware, there are certain code requirements in order to qualify for the approval of a variance in Virginia. The zoning administrator and the Division of Zoning have provided in their staff report that this request satisfies the statutory elements necessary for the BZA to grant a variance in this instance. This conclusion was reached in consultation with the County Attorney's Office, the County Manager's Office, and the Department of Planning. I'm happy and willing to discuss each element as necessary with the BZA, as we concur and are in agreement with the conclusion of Arlington County in this regard. Next slide. We therefore respectfully request that the BZA approve this increase, the height of the 6 poles and safety netting as described in the staff report at the spot elevations provided for an overall height not to exceed 330 feet of average site elevation. Thank you.
Thank you. Questions for this applicant? See no hands.
I'm willing to go.
Can you bring up the topographical map from that presentation?
Correct. I think,
The one with the height differences.
Longer.
It's got the squiggly lines all over it.
Talking about the one from the applicant's presentation?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, sorry about that.
I just had a brief question. I wanted to clarify something.
Sure.
I'm trying to get at you had meant there's a steep difference between the golf course, driving range, and the neighboring 4 properties.
Correct.
And then there was like whose property is that steep drop off on? Is that on the courses or is that on the homeowners?
Both. So at the bottom of the gorge is where the property line splits. And so, right, so it dips down. If the gorge kind of heads up, if we can get the thing up, I'll show you.
Mr. Kaplan, which slide were you referring to?
The one that shows it's like I think it was a black and white with a bunch of circles showing the change in height of the land. It's called a topographical map. That one.
There you go, yes. So you can see the green lines, of course, of the GIS
Right.
lot line overlays, and you can see where that.
I guess
can point
I
it
can't
out.
see the green line. Oh, okay, there it is.
Yeah, it's right here.
Right, so it's definitely,
It's right in the middle of that.
right,
gorge.
if not more so on the courses property.
No, it's evenly
Is
split.
it evenly? Okay.
And you can see this is that huge grove of trees that even in the gorge go way above
Yeah.
the existing houses. And of course, we're trying to prevent the balls from even traveling
Right.
through there to these 4 properties. And right now, the grade comes up this way.
That
but
makes sense.
It drops this way.
Yeah.
This is where leaving them exposed. And of course, from their actual elevations, as we build them up, they're going to be no higher than these poles. Poles we're trying to get to the uniform.
The same
height.
uniform.
Yeah.
There's a screen right behind you, so.
Good.
And what has changed? Right, so this is operated as a course for, I think you said, a long time. What changed to necessitate this? The location of the driving range hasn't changed.
No, everything's the same. This course has been here for, well over 100 years, 115 years at this location. I think going on 120 at this point. Technology has changed. People hit golf balls a lot farther than they used to. People have gone to different material, clubs. Golf balls are much different. Kids these days, I hate to say it, but kids these days are a lot better than their grandparents were. Marymount has a very good team. We've got a bunch of young collegiate athletes that are, very competitive. And nothing has changed over the years except for the height and distance with which, balls travel. And, it's challenging with a facility that's 130 acres in this part of Arlington, as you all know, up on Military Road, up in that northwest section of Arlington. The whole area is severe topography. And when you spread out a facility like this over all of that topography, invariably there's going to be holes in the netting that we want to plug. And we've done a very good job with the netting. This is the only place on 130 acres where the balls are escaping. And golf is a unique game in and of itself. It's not something that happens with any kind of frequency in Arlington County. There's one other golf course in Arlington County. This is the only other site with a sport that launches balls 400 yards at 100 feet high. So it's a very unique circumstance and a very unique location at this club that's made it extremely challenging.
Have you had a chance to review, there's a BZA comment form in the application package of someone who did not support this variance?
I did, and I saw that tonight, and that person did not reach out to us, which is unfortunate because we would love to meet them. Washington Golf is very good with the neighborhood. We've got great relationships with the civic associations and our neighbors. This whole effort is specifically at the neighbors and the community's request. This wasn't something we instigated on our own. This was at the request of the community. I found out where that person lives, and I don't know what their issue is about, because we just did, a few years ago, we did a full course renovation, which involved the county's largest environmental stream restoration project that achieved all of the county's nutrient credits for the environmental purposes for the next 10 years. It was so that might be what they're talking about, was that work that was done.
They're claiming that the driving range construction was recited, in quotes.
No, it was not.
And so you're attesting that this driving range has not changed?
It has not changed.
Okay.
It has not changed. We built a new clubhouse, but the house is or the range itself was in the same exact location.
That was one of my concerns about,
Okay.
the good faith. The applicant must come to this in good faith. And so if
Yes.
you had changed the
Had
layout
not-
or something, then,
Yep,
okay.
right.
Ms. Clark?
I guess in the allegation, it's saying that the applicant created the hardship, but in your last comment, you stated that there were holes in the fence, but I thought the proposal was to extend the fences higher, not that the balls were going through the holes.
Oh, no, I meant there's a gap in the height that's necessary to prevent the
Okay.
ball. So
Oh, okay.
it's just this one place where they're escaping, that we'd like to, do for our neighbors to prevent them from escaping over that one location.
Thank you.
I
Discussion
have
with
a couple questions.
Ms. McCruskey.
Yeah. I have actually two things that I'll just ask together. One is, can you tell us what was, just sort of very briefly, what was done to look at sort of the need to have this, to have this increased height in terms of, hitting golf balls? Did engineers look at that, or just at the topography? And then my second question would be, and I don't have all my resources with me because I'm out of town, but I guess my question is, how would the lack of this variance unreasonably restrict, I think that's the language now in the code, how would that unreasonably restrict the use of your property?
So to answer the first part of your question, we hired a trajectory engineer, and we hired a civil engineering firm, and we studied we did trajectory studies about where we could potentially have issues and where we've known we had issues, and we identified this as the one location. And this is strictly based on current hitting patterns. The engineers determined the criteria. It's a firm that specializes in these studies specifically for athletic facilities like ours. And so that's how we determined where it was. And of course, the neighbors, this is the one spot where we have complaints from the neighbors. So we were able to hone in on this specific area individually. So that's how we arrived at those conclusions. It was mostly mathematical and engineering based. And the second component of your question, I touched on it a little bit earlier. When you're managing a facility of this size, it's like squeezing a balloon. These balls go a long way, and as we redirect balls around the course, they invariably go over the fence somewhere else. And so, over 130 acres, we have, one small location where we haven't been able to solve for all these years. And of course, we've been doing this for 100 years, and this is our first problem with this. And so we studied all of those things you're talking about, and this was our solution with working with staff and the county who reviewed those engineering studies, and that's why we're here tonight.
Also went the lowest flight restricted ball a couple years
Right.
ago, 55%, to try to avoid this.
Right. And we also adopted rules and regs for the people that use this course, Marymount members of the club, and went to restricted flight balls. We decreased the types of balls we could use, the restricted flight paths. And of course, we have rules that nobody's allowed to hit balls over the fence, but invariably somebody swings one too far and makes a mistake.
When I play golf, it never goes to where I want it to, so I understand that.
Chairman Kaplan, with your permission, I'm the president of Washington Golf, the applicant. If I may just elaborate briefly on that comment.
Do my colleagues want to hear further on this?
We got questions.
We have, I'm sorry?
I'd like to ask,
Let's continue asking questions. Ms. Malice?
so is this a by right use?
It is. Well, so today, if we're a grandfathered use, when it was adopted, when the club began operations here, there was even a zoning ordinance in Arlington County.
I'm sorry,
Somebody was talking.
Somebody was talking.
Yeah.
Would you mind repeating?
It's a by right grandfathered use for us. Today, if we were to build a new country club in Arlington, you would have to seek a use permit.
So you have no use permit that governs this?
Right, we didn't, I mean, the zoning ordinance wasn't even in existence when this course was started.
Okay.
In fact, these neighborhoods weren't here when the course was started.
So what I'm trying to figure out is, we're being asked to create a variance on a hardship issue versus whether, let's ask the other question. If we were to deny this variance, what would be your recourse?
This is what we went around the barn for 2 years with Arlington County with this. There is no authority, the county currently under the current zoning ordinance does not have the authority to modify height by use permit in the R10 zoning district. So there is no height modification option for us legislatively that the county board can approve according to the current use permit regs that are accessible to us in our 10 district, which of course the R10 district didn't exist when we started. So there is no other option. And we tried administrative options. We pulled every rabbit we could out of the bag to try and not be here tonight.
Were that scary?
Well, so yeah.
So it's an R10 district?
It is, the whole thing. That's right. It's amazing.
So the county board presumably could rezone your section. I mean, I'm way out of my depth here, but I'm assuming the county board could do something here.
They could. That's the interesting question.
Not saying it's easy.
Yeah, that's the interesting question for the county board. They're the legislative body, and they are subject to the political whims of those neighborhoods. And I don't think anybody's interested in us doing something besides keeping it in the R districts up there.
So, what I'm struggling with is the hardship requirement.
Yes.
Because even in the staff report, they kind of waffle a little bit, and they say, in one part they say it's a hardship, and another part they say, well, it's really not a hardship, but it would limit the use.
Right. So when you look at it in its totality, getting back to the squeezing the balloon analogy, if it's not here, it's going to be somewhere else because the site's so big, and again, these balls are traveling so far these days, and the height limits in the R10 district are so low. If you had a baseball field, for instance, and these were the height limits, you couldn't play baseball. Mm-hmm. And it's the same thing with this course. At some points, because of the topography, someone's going to hit a ball that's going to go over a 35-foot fence or a net. And so this is a spot that we just don't have a solution for except for this.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Sure.
Mr. Chairman.
Ms. Freshman.
I think the fact that there are no other options is a hardship in and of itself. And so I have no trouble with approving it. And I think that if there's a legislative solution and anybody wants to get on the agenda for this kind of changes, which would probably take 10 years for the county board, they're welcome to do that. But I think it is so unique, and it doesn't appear to be any alternative way to address it. So I would certainly support it.
Anyone further?
I will just give my input, but I do think, the hardship unreasonably restricting the use is, it's a question, but I do think in this one, the hardship can be seen as the fact that it's having an adverse effect on the neighbors with the continued use of the club. And I do see this as it is an unusual case. I do think that the solution of rezoning the property, it's not that you could create a widespread make a zoning amendment of general application that would fix this problem, because this is really a site-specific problem that we have. And therefore, I do think the hardship issue is borderline, but because of the need to have the safety addressed here, I plan to support it.
Ms. Clark.
You showed some houses that, I guess, are those the houses where the balls are going over, and when were they constructed? Because they look fairly new.
Can you bring back that they are fairly new. Again, that whole Country Club View subdivision right there. There's a slide that actually shows a picture of the houses. If you go to that, that subdivision was subdivided and created around the country club in the 50s. But these houses have all been. These are not the original houses.
Okay.
So this is our second or third series of neighboring homes that have evolved alongside of us. But before this was all woods. We have a historical book that was written about this whole area of Arlington, and the club originally started over in North Roslyn and then was moved here later, a few years later. So none of this actually existed when they built this club and this course, and it's just come up around us. And as as we had neighborhoods come up, we took measures, we reached out to the neighbors, and we just solved this like neighbors. And again, we're here to solve this because they asked us, not because we're, when they raised the problem, we said, well, we need to address that. So.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman.
Ms. Malice.
So I will support the request for variance. But I want to say that I don't really, we didn't get into all of your arguments
Yes.
in terms of the BZA's powers and precedents and things like that. I can say that I don't agree with all your arguments.
I understand.
Even though I would agree that, a variance is in order.
I'd love to talk about that later. For hours.
Yeah.
Right.
So, yeah, you and staff, if you're all on the same page.
Can I say one more
Go ahead.
thing just before we get to the motion? And I have a couple edits just to the resolution, and I can't call up everything in front of me, but in paragraph 1 of the conditions, it says, talks about you can build according to the footprint shown on the survey, or shall build according to, if you go down to paragraph number 1,
The plat.
there, it says in the second line, with the footprint shown on the survey, I'd like it to say footprint and heights shown on the survey, because this is very specific to the heights. And then in paragraph number 2, to certify the structure's location and height, just to make sure that's very clear in this one, especially because I don't want it to be seen that there's an approval for every height of 66.8 feet or whatever. That I think the heights
Yes.
have been carefully studied, and we should make clear that they get the heights that are agreed to in all the documents that are being approved here.
I understand and appreciate Ms. McCoskey's desire for specificity here, and we fully intend to comply with the specificity that she just moved to add to the conditions, which is fine.
Yeah, thank you.
Yes.
Would you like to make such a motion?
Yes, I will. Can you move it down to where the motion shows?
Yeah.
Sorry. Yeah, I move that the Board of Zoning Appeals adopt the attached proposed resolution granting the variance V1197024VA2 with the 2 amendments agreed to by the applicant and proposed by Ms. McCoskey.
I'll second.
A motion made by Ms. McCroskey, seconded by Ms. Clark. Is there any further discussion?
Does staff
It's-
have a record of, do you feel like you understand what
Yes, yes, I
Crosby's
have it.
edits are?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay.
If no one else has any comments, I will just say I will plan on supporting this. I am operating under the second "or" on the staff report, where this will alleviate a hardship as relating to the property or improvements which existed at the date of the zoning ordinance, which clearly this property existed at the date of the ordinance. The hardship that I am seeing is that clearly there is a hilly terrain that has become a greater hardship as kids are getting stronger. And, you know, arguably, there's also a hardship of golf balls speeding at the neighbors at a, you know, high rate of speed. As also a hardship, although albeit that's a hardship to the neighbors, but that hardship is really, could be litigious to the course as well. So that could also be a hardship on the golf course, not to open up a can of worms. So I will support this as well. That being said, I will call the roll. Ms. Malice?
Aye.
Ms. Freshman?
Aye.
Ms. Clark?
Aye.
Ms. McCroskey?
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Motion to grant this use permit passes 5-0.
Okay, thank
Not
you.
a use permit, a variance.
Variance.
Thank
Yes,
you.
thank you. Thank you for tonight. Appreciate
Thank you very much.
Mr. Sutherland, can you please call the next case?
Yes, the next case is V-11971-24-UP-1, a use permit request by Mark and Kimberly Basadi, the owners, to permit a street setback of 19.6 feet to the building wall, 18.8 feet to the building eaves instead of 25 feet to the building wall, and 21 feet to the building eaves as required. Also to permit a street setback of 20.1 feet to the porch, and 18.3 feet to the porch eave instead of 21 feet to the porch.
Thank you.
Oh, there's more. I got lost. I'm sorry. To the porch, 19.5 feet to the porch eave as required. To permit a left side setback of 4.4 feet to the building wall, 3.6 feet to the building eaves instead of 8 feet to the building wall, and 5 feet to the building eaves as required. To permit a total aggregate side yard width of 15.2 feet instead of 18 feet as required, and to permit a left side setback of 2.4 feet to the AC units instead of 5 feet to the AC units as required, for new front porch, new roofing, a rear addition, AC units to an existing one-family detached dwelling in the R5 zoning district on the premises known as 205 North Barton Street in the Lion Park Civic Association. Staff recommends that the board adopt the attached proposed resolution approving the use permit with request with conditions.
Thank you. Questions of staff on this application?
I have a quick question. And if it's not quick, I can ask the applicant. But as I read this, it seems that essentially this is a second story being built over a first story, which already has these street setbacks existing, so that we're not, by doing this, we are allowing just an extension upward of the existing setback or things that are conforming. Can staff verify that? I don't know if the right person is here, but just to make sure that I'm understanding this correctly.
Yes, Ms. McCoskey, yeah, they are also part of the request is also for the street setback to the building wall. I also noticed that as I was doing the report, but I also believe that we just did it in case of any new siding regarding the second story addition and the attic level. So I think it was just to cover the bases in case there was any additional encroachments from that front wall.
We are also adding a rear addition, which is using that same left side setback, which is already encroaching in the front. Is that a correct understanding? I'm looking at the plat, and there's a proposed two-story addition in the rear, which has like a bump out further to take advantage of the 4.4, even though the property line is kind of at an angle.
That is correct.
It's not just the case that we're building a second story on existing foundation.
Yes, there's a couple additions proposed with this application.
Right. Which I might have just totally confused my colleague.
No, it's a good point.
Go ahead.
They are building closer to the property line than they would have if they had gone straight back.
Right. In most of these my kind of sense on most of these applications that we see before us, people try and maintain the same facade of the house going back, and this is kind of an exception to that.
Can you put up the plat, so that,
And I'm sure we will hear from the applicant as to why that's the case. But I heard staff's answer, and I just wanted to throw that in there to
yeah, no, it's.
To be clear.
It's not exactly intuitive.
right, and I don't know what that measurement is, right? I have no way to determine what that kind of bump out is on the left.
Okay.
Anything further for staff before we hear from the applicant? Is the applicant with us or online? Can you introduce yourself and?
You bet. Good evening. We are Mark and Kimberly Bisatti, and we're also surprisingly joined by our son Benjamin. Members of the BZA. We're the owners of 205 North Barton Street, which was built in 1920 as a 2-bed, 1-bath home that we purchased in 2012 as a family of 3. We are now a family of 5 and need to create more space by adding a second story and expanding to the backyard. We request approval from the BZA use permit to facilitate the transforming our current 1.5-story single-family home at 205 North Barton Street into a 2-story home with a front porch and air conditioning. The porch in the front of the home will line up with the existing house, which exceeds the front easement due to the curvature of Barton Street. This will keep the antiquated charm of original structure while adding outdoor living space that can be enjoyed with our neighbors. We submitted 18 signed letters of support from our neighborhood with our application. Our building plans reserve the maximum tree coverage to allow space for future expansion of our existing garage so that one day can fit a modern vehicle. But keeping the garage structure in its current location, we will not disturb a mature tree that is part of Arlington's tree canopy. Due to the rising costs and need to underpin our foundation, we had to defer the garage renovation to a later date. We appreciate the thoughtful guidance and assistance the BZA staff provided us over the last few months, resulted in a detailed staff report. Their report concluded that the overall footprint of our proposed home structure is similar to and smaller than at least 3 other properties immediately surrounding our home. Our requested left side setback is similar to several other properties in the immediate vicinity, either from the original construction, BZA, use permit, or variance. Our requested street setback is greater than at least 5 other properties in the immediate vicinity from either original construction or BZA use permit. And therefore, our proposed front porch, new roof, rear addition, and AC units promote compatibility of development within the neighborhood and would not conflict with the purposes of the master plans and land use and zoning related to policies of Arlington County. Again, we appreciate the BZA board and staff's time and consideration in our use permit application and the recommendation to approve the use permit. Thank you.
Thank you. Do my colleagues have questions of this applicant?
Minor question. So what happens to the driveway? The patio sort of looks like it moves into the area of the driveway.
Currently, our driveway only goes up to halfway up, and then it turns into a kind of a sidewalk that
Right.
reaches the garage.
So I'm just looking towards the front before it narrows.
We have no plans to change the existing driveway.
Okay. It just looks like you might be building your patio over the existing driveway. Maybe.
I
Maybe
think
not.
we have our, if this is,
That's not a crucial question.
okay, I think our architect is available
Yeah, it's
if you
not.
need some
No,
measurements. but-
it's just landscaping right there right now. There's a big bush, actually.
So
where
it's
the-
not
where the
really
porch
that
would come out
wide?
to. No,
Okay.
Yeah.
no, the driveway's,
I
it's
hope
fairly
not.
narrow. The
Okay.
driveway fits our car, the rest of the walkway. it doesn't.
Got it.
But does it also show part of the driveway becoming a grassy area?
No, this shouldn't show any changes from the existing
So
when it comes to
nothing's changing there?
landscaping in
There
the
may
front
be another
yard.
one,
Yeah.
okay.
Can you talk a little bit of that bump out in the rear? Do you know the measurement of how much that's bumping out from the house going towards the left side?
So when we were planning this design, we were originally planning to have the garage widened so that it could be used as a garage. And so during that original planning, in order to keep a minimum distance between the new house structure and where the garage would be. It made a lot of sense to keep the easement the same as the existing front corner of the house is the same as the new front corner.
I mean, I'm talking about the opposite side from the garage, right? So the.
Oh, I'm sorry, where are you
I'm
talking
looking
about?
at the plat.
Yeah.
Yeah, right, so like at the rear of the house, there's that 4.4 to the proposed two-story addition.
Yes.
So do you know what that measurement is between that corner and the actual current corner of the house?
Oh, it's the same. It should be 4.4.
No, what's the delta?
What's the
Between-
change? Right, so the current house is sets back what's the setback to the back of the house?
Oh, this little thing there.
Right, I'm trying to figure out how much that addition sticks out from that corner.
If you would allow Mr. Hutto, who's on the call, I think right now, he might be able to get that to you. I think technically I think he has it marked as verified in field because he wanted to focus on making sure the surveyor and the builders built that corner in the correct spot, and there might be some flexibility there.
And then
But I don't
back-
actually know what the number is, sir.
And then back to your original, that was kind of where I was going next, is the measurement from the rear addition back right to the corner of the garage. Is that the one you're concerned with?
I think we were concerned with that when we were trying to expand the garage, and that is.
And do you know what that is?
I think it was. I think the minimum right now is it 8 feet? You guys are the experts on.
Because that that looks
More
to
than
be,
8 feet?
that's at least 16 feet.
Right.
Okay. We can ask Mr. Hutto that if you need.
And then my question for staff is, what is that required separation?
Depending on the footprint of the garage, as we talked about before in a previous case, if the garage is greater than 560 square feet, or if it's 2 stories, then that separation needs to be 15 feet. If it's a story and a half or less, or less than 560 square feet, then the separation needs to be 8 feet.
Right, and so kind of where I was going at is, and I don't know where my colleagues are on this, but I'm just a little concerned of like trying to maintain that 4.4 also in the back of the property. We're introducing a whole new setback, and so it looks like you have a little bit of room if you wanted to maintain the same square footage
If you
and
could
come shift to the right, whatever 2 or 3 or 4 feet that is, then you can kind of not need that extra 4.4 in the back.
I don't have these numbers in front of me, and I apologize for you for that. But I do know that the shift during the design phase over the last year or so was due to making sure the garage fit within regulations. And I do know that our thought process was that we already need relief for 4.4 feet 4 inches for the front of our house to build on top of it. So it made a lot of sense of us that if we're already going to be requesting relief for the 4.4, that we just continue with that same 4 feet 4 inch number.
That's kind of my concern. Ms.
Was
Clark?
there any other attempts than the mail to go to that 201 address that didn't respond? And is that house vacant or rented?
Yeah,
it's-
oh, sorry.
Yeah, so I think it sold maybe October, November of last year, and the former owner moved out, and it's been vacant ever since. We haven't seen any activity on the property, and they did not respond to our mail. They did have another address, which we also mailed to. I think it was in Herndon.
It's either Herndon or Falls Church.
Yeah, Falls Church or Herndon, but we heard nothing back. It's currently owned by an LLC. We couldn't get in touch with.
Colleagues.
Yeah, I'm just trying to figure out, I mean, I noticed it and I wondered about this too, and I guess this is a question for staff. Once you grant the setback, in this case, for the existing house at 4.4, it carries along the entire property line as 4.4. So technically, you know, the second, the back almost becomes by right. If you grant the main house at 4.4, then they're permitted to build 4.4 all the way along the property line.
I'll let, well, I think they're not, only because when we approve the use permit, it's specifically for what's shown on the plans.
Yeah.
That's right.
Which, right,
It's
if,
so, okay.
Right.
right,
So-
if that were true, then they wouldn't be here for the second story on the front of the house.
Well, they would, because they have to verify that, they have to
Oh,
get
right, 'cause it's
permission
not
on the
conforming.
house.
Right, thank you.
Because it's not conforming.
Right.
But you're saying even though we give them permission to build that, it doesn't automatically grant
No,
For future projects, no.
no.
for future projects. So it is a case by itself.
Right.
That's
It's
right.
conditional upon its approval. If they tore it down 10 years later, they would need to come back for a different approval.
Okay. Microphone.
So I know everybody's thinking about this, and I'll just sort of inject my comment, which is, you know, sort of my usual standard, which is, you know, the zoning policies are set by, you know, in our zoning ordinance. And so the question is, does this comply with our zoning policies? And just making that big enough to go to the 4.4 doesn't seem to me to be consistent with the zoning policies. And I do look at this because there's already something that's 4.4 from that side lot line, and this is just another point. It's not all along the side. I'm not sure it's a big deal, but I think it is only concerning because there's not really a good reason that we should depart from the zoning policies, or I haven't heard a good reason why you couldn't redesign that to keep it in the back within the zoning policies, or at least even with the existing structure.
So that's why knowing what the size of that bump out is sort of important, because would it be within the by right? Would it be by right if it lined up with the back of the house? Or would they still need a use permit?
They would still need a use permit for the
For
front.
front,
Right, right. But I think what you meant was for the garage, where they, you know.
No, if the left side lined up
Oh, I see, right.
with the back of the house, what would be the distance at that corner?
I'm sorry, we don't have that measurement with us. I'm pretty sure it's still under, I think slightly, I mean by inches, but still under 8 feet.
The
Because
start of the.
Yeah, because he drew this pretty to scale, and the 4.4 measured on that side is definitely bigger than what appears to be the rest of the house, so it'd still be under the 8 feet. I'd also like to add that we are friendly with those neighbors at 209, whose property that is adjacent to, and they did sign our letter of support, and they are supportive of our,
Yeah, we
of this plan.
noted that, yep. So, have you verified that shifting the rear addition to line up with the back of the house would be a problem for the garage? Did you say your architect is here?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure he's virtually included in the meeting.
Maybe it's easier for him to.
Yeah, Mark Hutto.
MH should probably be him, yeah.
Can you help us with that?
This is Mark. Hello?
Oh, he's very quiet.
And Mark, can you speak a little bit louder, please?
That's his voice, though.
Yes, can you hear me?
Sounds like
Marginally.
Did you follow our questioning?
Yes.
So-
And what is the specific question about the
What
North Broad?
what would be the impact of shifting the rear story addition to line up with the left side of the house?
Of course, it would impact the size of the patio, and we didn't know what the future design of the garage was going to be like, as far as the overall dimensions, whether or not they were going to have a half story above. So we went ahead and decided to offset the rear addition to make space for the expansion of the garage. And it would be roughly probably 12 feet, I believe, if in its current location. It would be within 12 feet of the addition. The garage would be within 12 feet of the addition.
Question for staff. Do you have to have a setback to a patio?
Typically, if patios are less than 8 inches above grade, they don't have setback
Yeah,
requirements. with
there's
the
no
zoning.
setback to the patio.
Mr. Chairman.
Ms. Freshman.
I like the project a lot, and, but I understand the issues that have been raised of having the rear expansion in line with the existing home, especially given the strange placement on the unusually shaped lot. We have a lot of things going on here. But if the reason it is offset and further encroaching on the left side is because there may in the future be a garage issue, I don't think that's sufficient. I would prefer to see the project either be slightly smaller, but in any event aligned with the existing property line. And if and when there is ever a garage project, we can, hopefully I won't be here, but somebody will be here to address that if in fact you do it. In other words, I don't particularly, as much as I like the whole thrust of the project, I'm not persuaded that the offset on the left side, just in case there's a future garage project, is sufficient. And I would rather see it aligned on the left side. If it stays the same in terms of the size of the addition and therefore is closer to the garage, that's an issue for another day.
Thank you. The last point I'll make is, this is also one of these examples that we've had in the past where the applicant is asking for 6 different things all at once, which makes the comps very hard because we can find comps for each individual one, but as a package together. And that's kind of my problem. And I'm counting, it's really 5, but I'm counting the back one as 6 because it's really a second, ask, right? Even though it's the same number.
I didn't understand
That, this is an application.
I was under the impression that we don't have any issue with the back setback, the backyard setback.
I'm sorry, the rear, the rear left side setback, the second 4.4.
So if the house was built parallel to our lot line, which I think is the case in a lot of situations, this would be, I think, a lot easier to visualize because we are already 4.4 feet away from our lot line and we're looking to continue that same 4.4 feet away from our lot line. Right, but because our lot is slanted, and we weren't looking to rebuild where the existing house is, we're just looking to add extra square footage in the back, it makes it look like it has a jag, which I think you guys are having trouble visualizing as something that's necessary. But in reality, we are just keeping with the same offset that our house is currently sitting on, that the builders and planners here in the 1920s thought was the right place to position the house in the lot, and we are just continuing with that same placement as we expanded from a 1920 style house to something a little more modern.
I think your argument works the other way around. But I don't, I think having it line up with the existing house is the more conservative thing to do.
Yes, what I think is that currently you have a 4.4 setback location at the very front of your existing house, but you're asking us to approve you to encroach at a different point more than the existing house encroaches to get to 4.4 feet again. And I think that's where the concern is, because we are asked to approve things that are in compliance with the zoning policies, and the zoning policies are partly set forth in the ordinance, such as the setback requirements. And therefore, to approve this setback of 4.4 in a different location, that's a new use permit that isn't in compliance with the zoning policies and doesn't seem to be necessary for any reason except this potential, maybe what sounds like it might be a very large garage. I think that's where people's concern is, that to approve that use permit doesn't seem to meet the standards for use permit approval that the BZA has.
Excuse me, if I can interject. I just received from one of my colleagues information that, you know, to your question, if they built in line with the existing house, and it's an estimate, it's approximately 7.6 feet, and so they would still need some type of relief.
Which is a much
possibly.
less ask, though.
It's
Right.
much smaller.
Right.
Yes,
But
that's
it's
helpful.
but they would still need relief
Right,
from the BZA.
So, I mean, we're talking, I'm sorry to interrupt, we're talking about a difference of about 3 feet, right?
Yeah. So I don't want to deny your application if you're interested in working on shifting, working with your architect and coming back with another plan. That would be another option.
I guess we've been working on this for 2 years, and I know it is a lot of, maybe a lot of setbacks to ask at once, but the footprint of our house, there's been no BZA applications up to this point. Our house was built in 1920, and they've never expanded the footprint, so we currently have 5 people living in a 2.5 bedroom house, and we've saved up our money for 10 years in order to do this renovation, so it's taken a long time to get here, and certainly we could continue trying with our architect to this was, he's done a lot of houses in Arlington and Alexandria in the neighborhood, and so we went with his best estimate, of what he thought would look best on this property and how it would work, and we got the approval of our neighbors, so we could, I certainly don't want it to be denied either, so we could keep trying if that's the only.
Do you think you could work with your architect in a 2-month period, come back in 2 months with a revised proposal?
Before we go there, I mean, staff was able to find several other houses that have, smaller setbacks than ours, that are bigger lot coverages than ours, than we're asking. So, whereas I was under the impression that this board did a lot of making sure that what was being requested was in line with what is currently existing in that neighborhood, not looking to set a new precedence, but to just make sure that the similar precedent is established in that area. And it was, I've only watched a couple previous BZA board meetings online. I don't think I've witnessed as many as you guys have, but it did seem like our project doesn't break the tradition of what's going on North Barton Street and the surrounding area. But that being said, is coming back in 2 months the only, is first of all, as you pointed out, there were a couple setback questions listed here. Is there issue with the other ones, or is it just the single one that is an issue?
I mean, I could speak for myself because my colleagues are their own. I think that you can come back to us and get with something approvable. My concern was that one area. I didn't have any huge concerns with any of the other items that you're asking for on here. That answers your question for me. Right.
Okay.
But
don't think it would
understand
be-
that we can't guarantee
Right.
an outcome.
'Cause we don't see a, we would need to see a plan, right?
Yeah, I understand. I guess I just feel a little bit like we're being punished because we can't afford the full project. And if we did come here with a full plan with the garage at the new thing, then it wouldn't be a future thing. It would be an existing right now thing.
Which
and everything would.
I'm not sure would change the outcome. So I don't agree with that you're being
Okay.
punished. I think, with or without the garage, that concern doesn't go away.
Okay.
And so we still would have to ask for the setback because we still are the 7.6.
Yes.
Yeah. Are you guys allowed to approve because it sounds like you guys would approve it now if the rear addition was in line with where the existing house ends, and the front porch is the same either way. The air conditioner would be in the same spot either way.
We wouldn't know what that setback is. So, we just have an estimate of what that setback is. So we would need to, in order for us to approve that, we need that exact measurement because you're going to be held to that when you build and get a new survey. You're going to have to get a survey to show the county that it is where it is.
The wall check people can't just make sure it's the same plane.
No, because the angles and everything, we would need something.
It'd be flat.
It has to be something that is verifiable.
Okay, but you guys are looking for a project where the wall is completely flat from the end of the original structure to the start of the new structure, and back is just on the same plane, the same line.
That's my biggest concern, and probably the only thing that would stop me from approving it at the moment is now.
Okay.
But then you can make other changes, right? I mean, it's your project, so don't feel like you're limited. If you want to, like, move the right side of the back to compensate a couple feet, right? You have options.
I see. Because that might shift the whole thing over, and now you need to have all those things also.
Exactly.
Okay. Thank you for taking a moment and explaining that to us.
No, anytime. I know this is not a fun process, and some of us have been through this, so it's not.
No.
So
We get it.
a 2-month.
Well, I think, and just as far as process is concerned, when we see the next iteration, we need the same level of detail and on the plat, and an approval, should you get that, it references all of those submissions and plans, which is why it isn't something that can happen like next month. In part because all of those plans have to go through the whole staff process and be part of the advertisement, which comes out several weeks before the meeting. So if it's 2 months from now, you still kind of have to get on it, but you would be able to come up with an alternative plan and bring it to the staff and go through the whole process.
No, yeah, we're very familiar with staff, and they've been great. We learned a lot about building eaves and accessories and staircases.
And also the thickness of your siding. Had people come in for an inch.
Yeah, I actually think I saw that video that happened where the foundation was perfect, but the siding at an inch, and then they didn't have 15 feet anymore. Yeah, that was
So
hard to
you
listen
build
to.
in a little wiggle room.
Yeah.
And that costs a lot of money if you have to come back, so build in wiggle room.
I'll come back a third. We are coming back, it sounds like. So we're coming back a third
No,
time.
I mean, after you build.
Oh, gotcha.
That costs more.
Okay.
Whatever the permitting, whatever the BZA cost is, it's more, so
Okay.
be careful.
I think the architect had his hand up.
Did you want to weigh in just to the timing? I think all we really want to hear about is timing. To the architect.
Mr. Hutto?
Yes. I did want to reply to someone on the board who said something to the effect that the addition would be less than the existing 4.4 feet. It would not be less than 4.4 feet. That would be the maximum encroachment to the side yard. And I question the board as to if the side yard was parallel with the existing house.
Thank you. I think we're ready to make a decision.
Yeah, the setback is the issue, whether or not, apart from the property line angle.
Right.
So if it was a straight line and you had 4.4, we'd still have the same conversation and still be looking for it to be lined up.
Do we think 2 months is sufficient to,
That's the question for the architect.
to do plans and feedback?
November 13th.
What's that?
Not that we have to get the neighbors' support again, it's the feedback.
Do we need to do the whole neighbor process again too?
Do.
Yeah. Okay. And then I think just for the record, it sounds like where our misconception was that just because we're getting a left side setback of 4.4 feet for the existing house doesn't mean we automatically get it for the whole way down.
That's right.
Okay, thank you for that clarification.
When you bring a plan to the BZA for a use permit, we look at the entire plan as a whole, not just the one portion. So do we think that 2 months is sufficient?
Yeah, I really, really hope so. Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman.
Motion?
Miss,
Judy's ready.
I'm sorry, what's going on?
Are we supposed to stand here?
She's going to make a motion.
You don't need to.
Okay.
Who is?
Judy.
Ms. Freshman, sorry.
Yes.
See you.
I move deferral to November 13th of use permit V-11971-24-UP-1.
Second.
A motion for deferral to November 13th, 2024, made by Ms. Freshman, seconded by Ms. Malice. Is there any further discussion? I will call the roll. Ms. Malice?
Aye.
Ms. Freshman?
Aye.
Ms. Clark?
Aye.
Ms. McCroskey?
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Motion for deferral passes 5-0. I know it's not what you wanted, but we will get this. We will get this right. Can you recall the next case?
Yes.
Actually, before you call the case, I just wanted to state that we have a hard cutoff tonight at 11 o'clock. We are getting kicked out of the room at 11, and we have a carryover date if scheduled.
Yes, the carryover date will be next Wednesday, the 25th, in the same location.
Wednesday the 25th in this same location, but we can cross that bridge when we get there.
You ready for the next case?
Yes, please. Sorry,
Okay.
I just wanted to, we're at 9 o'clock already, so we still have 2 hours.
Okay.
But some of the appeals are pretty lengthy at the end.
Understood. The next case is V-11972-24-UP-1, a use permit request by Christian Abrigo on behalf of Susan McNally, the owner, to permit a right side setback of 4.8 feet to the window well instead of 5 feet to the window well as required for a new window well to existing one-family detached dwelling in the R6 zoning district on the premises known as 2606 North Lexington Street in the Leeway Overley Civic Association. The staff recommends that the board adopt the attached proposed resolution granting the use permit request with conditions. Staff we would like to note that there's a supplemental material for the case that came in. After the materials were posted, mainly a supplemental staff report amending the revised summary where it states 4.8 feet to the window well instead of 5 feet. The correction is 6 feet to the window well as required. And then we're making an update to the recitals in the whereas section stating as such 4.8 feet to the window well instead of 6 feet to the window well as required. Are there any speakers, Brett?
No speaker signed up for this project.
Thank you.
Sorry. Is there questions for staff on this application?
I'm the homeowner, and my husband's on the video to speak, Kevin McGuire.
We're not quite ready for the applicant. Stand by, you can sit right there.
You sit close
Stay right in the
by.
front, stay in the front. Just right here.
You
You
can sit right there.
don't have to go far. I think we're just going to ask questions of staff, and then we will come to you. Do we have questions for staff?
Mr. Chairman?
Ms. Malice?
Yeah, a question for staff. I see the supplemental report that's got a revised summary of the request. Is there a reason that this doesn't need to be re-advertised?
I wouldn't believe it needs to be because the only advertisement, the only language included in the advertisement is a use permit request at 2606 North Lexington Street, and I believe staff should be able to modify any resolution changes after the hearing.
Thank you. I think we're ready for the applicant. Go ahead.
Kevin McGuire was going to speak. He's on the speaker, speaker thing.
He's virtual.
And I'm sorry, who is Mr. McGuire?
He's co-owner with me,
Okay, thank you.
my husband.
Okay, he's just, the name's not on my slide,
Oh,
so I
sorry.
wanted for the record.
Yeah.
Right, thank you. Mr. McGuire, go ahead.
Hi, yes, my name is Kevin.
We can't hear you.
Address is 26. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay.
Perfect.
My permanent address is 2606 North Lexington, the subject property. And Susan's asked me to just run through this with you all. As you heard, we were seeking a use permit to allow for a right side setback of 4.8 feet, which I thought was 0.2 feet less than the code required 5 feet. I never had heard of the 6 feet, so I don't understand. I mean, all the communication that I'd received earlier was about the 5 feet, but so I can't address that. The narrowest setback will allow us for the installation of a window well for an egress window. I hope we've provided all the information required to make a favorable decision. For our neighborhood outreach, we obtained positive feedback from all of our immediate neighbors, with the exception of the one directly behind us who did not respond to our inquiry. And I'd ask that you please approve the use permit that will improve the safety of our basement for us. Thank you.
Could you state your name again?
Kevin McGuire.
Thank you.
I just have a quick question. Is there a planned change in use of your basement at all that necessitates this, the egress window? Or is this just a general improvement you've decided to make?
It's a general safety improvement to, make it a little safer for people to be in the basement.
Can I ask a question of staff? I am missing something here about this change from 5 to 6 feet. On the first page of the staff report, encroachments allowed into required yards and courts. After the first semicolon, window wells and area ways, ... 5 feet. So where are we getting 6 feet from?
Yeah, it's also in the graphic, on the interior lot graphic.
Yeah, so since neither side meets 10 feet, the requirement would be 10 feet on both sides, so that's where the 4-foot encroachment comes in for that side setback request. So it'd be 6 feet instead of the 5 feet.
But how does that interplay with the actual language that says 5 feet? That's why I'm totally confused here. Right, so presumably Article 326A 3A3 specifically says 5 feet. Does that ordinance somewhere say only if both sides are 10 feet? I mean, do we have the wrong graphic and the wrong code citation?
No, it's the right code section. Approach no more than 4 feet. it doesn't meet 10 feet on this side, that's just been my understanding, like it's a 4-foot, just doesn't refer to it specifically.
I'm not sure my analysis changes either way. I think we just need to get the right setback, so that we know what the actual language of the use permit is.
Let me take a look at the plat.
Right, so I just wanted the applicant to know, I don't personally have an issue with either of the two, whether it's 1.2 or 0.2, but we just need to get the right
Right.
measurement for what to approve or not approve, right? This
Yeah,
is
'cause-
largely out of your control here.
Yeah, because the staff report also refers to a 5-foot setback for unenclosed structures, such as balconies, eaves, areaways, and window wells.
Is the carryover next Wednesday?
The 25th.
So my, speaking with Brett, my understanding, that the lot, is this prior to the zoning ordinance, is non-conforming with the setbacks. And because, in our R6 district, the zoning ordinance requires an aggregate of 18 feet, with a minimum of 8 on one side and 10 on the other side. And because, neither side meets, either requirement, we go with the most restrictive of 10 feet. And so window wells are allowed to encroach up to 6 feet, or 4 feet to reduce the side yard to 6 feet. And so that's why the 6 feet is there instead of 5.
Now, the left side setback says 9.6. Is that what you're seeing?
Correct, but we're talking about the right side setback where the window well is.
Right, but you said the combined have to be 18, right?
Correct. But you have to have one on each side. One has to be a minimum of 10 or 8.
So I think I see the confusion. It's, the following unenclosed uses may encroach no more than 4 feet, but not nearer than 5 feet to any property line. Right, so this window well can encroach 4 feet into a 10-foot setback, which puts it at 6 feet, but it also can't be closer than 5 feet to any property line.
Correct.
Are we within 5 feet to the property line?
7.8.
No, that was the original request that I thought we were making, is to ask for.
No, I that was a question for us. Thank you.
Oh, sorry.
We're just working through this.
Right.
I think we're there. I think we're good.
Because it's 4.8 feet to the sideline.
I get it. I'm
So
sorry
I'm
for
with
the
you.
detour.
Yeah, so I'm with you. It's a little confusing.
Is everyone
There's
else
a lot of-
good?
No, but I don't.
No.
No. But that's all right.
Okay.
You're good.
I'm good. We're good. So apologies. So I understand how the confusion happened, and I'm good.
Okay.
Did you speak to your application yet?
Yes.
Yes, we did. Just
I'll make a
motion. Apologies.
Mr. Chairman.
Ms. Malice, please.
I move that the Board of Zoning Appeals approve the attached proposed resolution granting use permit V-11972-24-UP-1, subject to the conditions listed.
Second.
A motion made by Ms. Malice, seconded by Ms. Freshman for passage as advertised. Is there any further discussion? I will call the roll. Ms. Malice?
Aye.
Ms. Freshman?
Aye.
Ms. Clark?
Aye.
Ms. McCroskey? Ms. McCoskey?
Aye, sorry, I was on mute.
Chair votes aye. Window well passes 5-0. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for your patience. Next
Thank
case,
you.
please.
Sorry, can you repeat the vote, please?
5-0.
5-0, thank you. Excuse me, this is a question as to whether you want to make a decision on deferring the appeals to the last two cases now. Oh, just the final one. To when?
What's bringing this up?
To the carryover date?
Is
Why are
there
we-
someone asking?
Only based on, because you made a comment about the timing. It's entirely.
Oh, no,
up to
I mean,
you.
I just wanted,
We don't know.
Okay.
I just wanted everyone in the room to know that there was a hard cutoff, so it's possible.
All right, so the next, ready for,
We are the last appeal, and I would be happy to take the carryover date if we don't think that there's going to be enough time, just because I'm obviously billing my client up here, and we could just cut that off now and take the carryover date. I do think we'll probably need about 30 minutes at least for ours, and I wouldn't be surprised if the other appeal was
Never
40
make it.
minutes. It's a distracting
We'll make
time.
either
Mark
appeal.
off 11 cases you have left, I just submit that.
What case are we at right now? What number are we at?
Um,
Where are we on our agenda?
We've got one,
Two more
two.
before the appeals.
Two more than two appeals.
Yeah. I think we're in good shape.
I think we're going to plow through these next two. Can you call the next case?
yes, the next case is V-1173-24-UP-1, a use permit request by Stephen Tinter on behalf of Karen and David Hartzeller. The owners to permit a right side setback of 8.8 feet to the building wall instead of 9 feet to the building wall as previously approved, and to permit a total aggregate side yard width of 16.6 feet instead of 16.8 feet as previously approved for a modification of BZA variance V-4806-78-1 for a second-story addition and a new front porch addition to an existing one-family detached dwelling in the R6 zoning district on the premises known as 5129 25th Place North in the Yorktown Civic Association. Staff recommends that the board adopt the attached proposed resolution granting the use permit request with conditions.
Thank you. Any questions of staff on this application?
Mr. Chairman?
Ms. Malice?
Yeah, my question for staff has to do with the fact that this property had a previous variance that indicated that it was not to be, am I on the right case?
Yes,
It had a previous variance, right?
correct.
That it was not, it had a previous variance that said, you know, there was a porch granted and you would not build above it. Does staff, I didn't see any discussion of that in the staff report. Does staff have an opinion on how that might impact this decision?
Let's see. I would have to find the condition that you're referencing, but from my understanding is that one of the issues here is that when the variance was granted and they constructed the addition, they didn't build to the required setback as required in the previous variance, and now they're asking to have that right side setback be established as previously granted.
Ms. Mellis,
I am on the wrong case.
I do believe this is 7-3.
Yeah.
My sense is that a previous BZA granted a use permit or a variance and added the conditions, and we are the current BZA who can alter those conditions.
That was my question. That was my question for staff. Does that their understanding?
I'm just going to jump in to see if I can clarify, because I think you may be thinking of the next case after
That's
this
what I was
one,
wondering
which is
if
about the
yeah, I think I'm on the
garage.
wrong case.
Yes, I think this one is also prior variances, but this is not the one where the prior requirement
Got it.
was they not built
Thank you.
toward the
No,
front or back of the property.
I
That's
was
the next
kind of
one.
thinking I might not be on the right page here, literally.
Any other questions? Mr. Tinter, this is your .2 case.
Yes, good evening. Again, I have the owner with us today as well. Again, I'm Steve Tinter, Cook Brothers. Yeah, I think what wound up coming up here was that when we had talked to the zoning office about this, we got a new plat made for this. We came to find out that the original house, or the original rear addition, was built with a variance, I think in 1978. I don't think that they gave us the conditions, so we couldn't verify if the conditions were that we could build over it or not. I know some of them had it, some didn't, but we couldn't verify that. But I guess it didn't really matter, because when we came back with the new survey plat, I guess in 1978, they missed the mark by a little bit. It was supposed to be built at 9 feet, I think, and it was built to within 8.8 feet. So the zoning office said that we should probably include that with our request for building on top of it. And like I said, whether it was given permission to the condition of not being able to build over or not wouldn't have mattered, because it was a non-conforming, it wasn't conforming to the original variant. So that's what we're asking for today.
Thank you. I'm happy to correct a wrong. Do my colleagues have questions for this applicant? Discussion or motion?
Okay.
Are there no hands?
I move the Board of Zoning Appeals approve the attached proposed resolution granting use permit V-11973-24-UP1, subject to conditions in the staff report.
I'll second.
Motion made by Ms. Freshman, seconded by Ms. Clark for passage as advertised. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, I will call the roll. Ms. Malice?
Aye.
Ms. Freshman?
Aye.
Ms. Clark?
Aye.
Ms. McCroskey?
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Motion for passage passes 5-0. Thank you.
Thank you.
Can you please call the next case?
All right, the next case is V-1172424UP-1, a use permit request by Paul Arquette on behalf of Horizon Trust, care of Andrew Cogran, the owner, to permit a right side setback of 3.6 feet to the building wall, 2.1 feet to the building eaves instead of 10 feet to the building wall, and 6 feet to the building eaves as required. This permit a total aggregate side yard width of 12 feet instead of 18 feet is required. A new side addition and building over an encroaching garage to an existing one-family detached dwelling in the R6 zoning district on the premises known as 4823 8th Road South in the Barcroft Civic Association. Staff recommends that the board adopt the proposed resolution granting the use permit request. with conditions. Are there any speakers? Brett? Can't see.
We do have a speaker. Ms. Newman.
I'm Miss Newman. I must admit, that's a mistake.
Oh, excellent. Thank you for speaking up. Do my colleagues have questions for staff?
Now that we're on the case I thought we were on, the question is, does the fact that the BZA granted a variance at the time with the requirement that the enclosed carport not be built over, have any effect on our decision tonight?
No, you can override the previous BZA's conditions. That's my understanding.
Ms. Freshman?
Is it, yeah, I thought that the garage was extending to the front and the rear, but not being built over? That the second story is just on the main building? Or is that, am I reading the plat wrong?
I think it's the whole way. No?
The applicant can probably speak to this. Right, I think the applicant can speak to this.
Good evening. I see where the confusion can come from. I wrote second story addition on top of the original structure, and then over the garage, I didn't reference second story, but the intention is for the second story to be on the original structure in the garage.
Front to back.
Front to back, yes.
Which makes the Mrs. Malice's question very important. The interpretation of the previous variance. You're the applicant?
I am the owner.
While we're waiting for that, I noticed that you had really substantial support from all your neighbors, almost every one of which mentioned tree preservation. Replacing the trees on the garage side, but then protecting all the rest of them. So you have an objection to a part of a resolution that would ask for that, or a tree plan, or some kind of a preservation? Since presumably you're not disturbing the land other than with equipment and that sort of thing. It should be not that difficult to protect the trees.
Correct. My intention is to do the most logical addition I can to increase the functionality of the home as much as possible, but also not creating a huge disturbance. So, if there was like a new house built there, you would be disturbing much more land than if I am just building and adding addition to the current original structure. Like as if there was a basement being dug out. That would be much more trauma to the surrounding plant life than what I'm proposing. So I don't have any objection to some sort of clause that references the trees. I fully understand my current neighbors' desire to protect the trees. There's a lot of beautiful trees in the surrounding neighborhood, and especially to the immediate left of the home when you're facing it, there's two very tall maple trees that have been there for far longer than I've been alive, and I don't want to hurt them at all. That being said, adding trees, I need to look into where they can be located, because two would be removed where the garage would be built. 2 trees would have to be removed from that, so I'd have to look into where I could add in other plant life to replace what would be taken out. But I'm going to look into that.
Mr. Chairman?
Ms. Malice.
So your construction, you're building do you have a sense of how your contractor would sort of approach this in order to stay off that side? I know that's really hard because you're going to be finishing walls and roofs and stuff. So. Is that something that that you had a chance to discuss at this point?
I have not spoken about that in detail with the contractor I have in mind.
You haven't selected the contractor?
I haven't selected the
Okay.
contractor yet. I'm going through this step by step. So, however, I have thought about what you're bringing up. I'm an engineer. I think about things logically. So, my expected procedure here would maybe build over the original structure, demolish the garage, build the second story roof above the original house, and then tackle the garage second, which would allow for easy access to the rear of the house for storing material, and then the much more simple addition of second story above the garage would follow after that. And given that there is significant space between the two houses on that garage side, I think that you would have ample access with a ladder or a scaffolding system to handle the finishing of that side.
Excuse me, sir, and Mr. Colgren, did you say you had a supplemental email? Did you bring that?
Yes, I do have
Please,
printouts. I apologize for a little bit of documentation churn here. Last week, I was notified that I was missing a couple neighborhood outreach, so I went to those neighbors and got, apologies for going over. I got statements from the 3 remaining neighbors who I hadn't been able to catch in person yet, and included their statements. And then, because I'm constantly sort of rethinking what I want to do for this addition, I included the most recent vision of the addition. So the changes that did not make it into the use permit applications in the staff report that you have right now, the roof increases by 1 foot based on the 7-inch pitch that I thought would work best. And there's a bit of a patio at the rear of the garage that would have like a 4-foot tall wall surrounding the air conditioning condenser unit, and it would also sort of disguise the trash and recycling cans. I don't think the detail that there would be a wall on that concrete pad was included in that staff report that you have right now, but I'm more than happy to hand out printouts showing that detail to you right now. The last one I'll keep because it didn't finish printing everything.
I think we're going to spend a lot of time on the first one. I don't know. Any? Oh, thank you. What? I don't understand.
Yeah. So
Why am I getting this?
Did the plan change?
The only thing, there's some very minor changes. It's the roof the differences between what you have that the staff prepared and what I just handed out. The roof increased by 1 foot from 31 to 32 feet. And I added a 4-foot tall wall at the rear of the garage to help hide the garbage can.
I think we have to defer this,
Yeah.
because we don't have time to review all of this and then review all of the feedback for those changes. I don't know how my colleagues feel.
So,
Ms. McCroskey, is that your hand?
Yes, it is. So I just wanted to express, and, you know, we may need to defer this, but I'm pretty concerned about taking the garage and basically extending it to the front of the house and the back of the house. And trying to get the right side setback approved at 3.6 feet for the entire width of the thing. I mean, and this is where I sort of try to look at all these things, is is it consistent with the zoning policies of the county? And the zoning policy is obviously to have the 10-foot setback, but also, you know, in the earlier actions in the 90s by the BZA on this matter, it was clearly important to keep that, you know, they approved the building the carport into a garage, and it was already encroaching. But to me, to allow it to go all the way to the front just totally changes the character of what we try to do with our setbacks, which is to create some light and air between properties. And now we have this house as a big block. And so I have a lot of concern about making that change, and I don't know why that's necessary when, from the street front, at least right now, the house looks like it would have fairly normal setbacks as are required by zoning. So it sounds like we're going to maybe have to defer this, but I did want to express that concern, because that, you know, I'm not sure why. It seems like that's an awfully long garage, and I just don't see why we should kind of eliminate the setback from the street view entirely.
Thank you.
So I'm not sure what the intent of all this is, if it's in response to some feedback that you've gotten, or if is this just another idea that you've?
It's more the latter.
Okay.
If I can help minimize turning confusion and maybe just forget I handed you that, I'd like a decision today if at all possible, so I can make forward progress on this project. That's probably a minor feature that can be debated at a later date.
I just want to note the applicant's agent has his hand up in the chat as well, and he might be able to provide some information.
And my architect, Paul Arquette, is online too, if he wants to say anything.
Well,
I mean, I think the applicant's time is up, and unless my colleagues want to hear more.
So I too am concerned that, you know, a previous BZA made a decision in turning this carport into a garage, and now, you know, we're expanding it in both directions. I am concerned about that. I guess I don't think I would support it if it came to a vote tonight.
With any remaining time available to keep tonight, do you have any suggestions for what garage changes would be supported?
I'm only speaking for myself, so I don't even know if my other colleagues are concerned. I'd have to, you know, we'd have to hear if there's a general consensus here.
Well, we've heard from two, so.
We've heard from two.
Yes,
That's
you're the
my-
second.
Yes.
Yeah.
I understand, okay.
Does anyone else want to weigh in here?
Have we gotten an opinion on the build-over issue?
Well, I think Mr. Sutherland said that the condition is really, will not be built over unless another BZA allows it. I think that's what
Right,
we said.
we have the power to overrule previous BZAs.
Okay.
But it doesn't mean that we might not continue to agree with them.
Right.
It's just that we can reconsider it.
Do we want to hear from the speaker?
Is the garage
There is no
going to be,
speaker, I was gonna say.
remain a garage?
Oh, okay.
Yes.
And you're just making it, you want to make it larger, longer?
But it's 2 stories.
Yeah, I think
Yeah,
that's,
the garage right now is smaller than would be prudent for storing a car in it. So extending the garage just felt like a logical decision to help improve the house, and then the other decisions are just to overall improve the functionality of the house, support a family living there, by increased number of bedrooms and the size of the living space, and overall just bringing the house up to what more modern architecture and construction is.
So basically, if I'm looking at the floor plans, there would be 2 bedrooms over the existing carport area. That,
Yes.
2 big bedrooms.
pretty small.
Question for staff. The comparables, the neighbor has a 5-foot right and a left side setback. Do we know what that's for? Is that what, that's the house, 1-story, 2-story, what is it? Right, so I'm having trouble with the comps here. Attached carport, and then a second-story addition, but 620 feet away. So I'm having trouble with compatibility in addition to my colleagues' concerns.
Carport, yeah, good point.
And even, you know, the adjacent neighbor has the right side's 5 foot, and we're going even lower than that already. So at best, we have one comp over 600 feet away.
And it's moving slow, so I can't get the visual
yeah.
of them all.
Yeah.
But staff was trying to find other comparables in the area that was.
This is the best we got.
Right, this is the best we got, so.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Yeah. So I will throw that I'm probably the third vote to not approve this application. Do you want a deferral to try and rework it? Or is it this or nothing?
I would prefer a deferral.
2 months?
I could probably
It
come
has
up
to-
with a different concept next month.
It has to be re-advertised and feedback from neighbors.
I see, okay.
So it's a good amount of work because staff has to then do all of their analysis and they need time to do it as well. And I don't know when, you're probably finalizing next month, like imminently, right?
Yeah, I'll be finalizing the October agenda within the next week.
And so you don't have time to do one next week?
Especially with the new plans that were attached, I think staff would probably prefer to take a look at those and just confirm.
Do you have time to work through that for the November?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Should have time.
So I will make a motion for a November 13th deferral in application for use permit V-11974-24-UP-1 for deferral to the November 13th BZA hearing.
Second. Oh,
A motion made by the chair, seconded by Ms. Freshman. Any further discussion? I will call the roll. Ms. Malice?
Aye.
Ms. Freshman?
Aye.
Ms. Clark?
Aye.
Ms. McCroskey?
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Deferrals till the November hearing is 5-0. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right.
So this is the Tuckahoe. Staff, that's
Which
the
one's first? Defense?
EHO. EHO's first.
Yeah, the staff's going to take 5 or 10 minutes. The attorney is going to want to speak because they have their big standing argument.
Okay, here come the big guns.
I need a break.
I know.
Clark is asking for a break.
It's 9:46.
No way we're going to do
10:46. Okay.
Yes, one second.
Let's take a.
Well, let's-
break. Or when
I was just going to address this issue now.
you can, or you can address it.
I think I'm of the opinion we're not going to hit 2 appeals today. We have about an hour and a quarter left, and we're going to take a brief 5-minute break. Is that pretty clear that we're not going to hit the second one today?
That's right.
Sorry.
You have your answer. A week from tonight.
We have 2 more appeals on the calendar for October, so I don't think we would hit it.
Can we put them first?
I'll be clear with you that I was going to ask for a 3-month deferral of this appeal anyways, because that's the building permit that I want to get.
Which?
Objected for.
Which appeal is that?
Does staff have any thought? I mean, I'm inclined, I don't know about my colleague, I'm inclined to put this next week because we probably can't do it in October because do we have a full agenda in October in addition to 2 appeals? Yeah. So like we're not going to be in any better position next month.
But we can put it first.
Then we end up deferring more appeals.
Right, but then at least we're hearing them in order. I'm sorry, did you say you wanted a deferral?
Yes.
3 months.
And this is for the Randolph Street property?
Yes.
And is staff in
What-
agree? would
what is
staff
staff's opinion on
Agree
this?
to a deferral?
I don't think it's necessary. Honestly, it's a zoning violation. It's an appeal of a zoning violation.
Yeah,
from
yeah. I know.
months ago.
I'm inclined not to defer it and to get these heard as.
Just put it on first on the agenda next
We
week.
can discuss the details next week, it's fine.
So I guess our option is put it first on our agenda for the October hearing.
No, we're going to hear this next week.
Oh, next week. Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
I misheard you. Sorry.
Oh.
No, I think we're going to hear this next week. Is everyone still good with next week?
Yeah.
Okay. Do we need, since it's a carryover date, do we need to make a motion or is it just carryover?
We'll just, unanimous consent?
Is this just the last appeal?
Next week is the carryover date.
Yes, we advertise the carryover date.
Yeah, so just unanimous consent to adopt, change the agenda.
Any objections from the
It's
county?
Wednesday, is that correct? What time?
A week,
7?
7 o'clock.
Yeah,
Same place.
Yep.
So seek unanimous consent
To adjust the agenda.
to adjust the agenda for, you have
Case number,
this one. For case number V-11976-24-APP-1 to move to our carryover date on September
23rd,
25th.
25th.
No objections.
No objections being heard. It shall be scheduled. We're going to take a 5-minute break.
Sorry, I didn't mean to confuse you.
No, I thought you were asking to put it first on the agenda, because it's the only thing on the agenda, so that's
only
what
thing.
confused me. Right.
Only
So
thing.
we're coming back for one case.
An appeal, it's going to be an hour.
I don't think so. But
Well, okay. Also don't have to come. Don't need a full.
there's that. So I've got on my calendar.
Cedric. I know it's tough. I thought there might have been,
I was gonna say, is that new for you? But you don't run, yeah, drive it to. Yeah, they're big, big fat liars. They told me, they lied because they told me that at this point I'd be, you know, using my right hand. Freaking liars. I know. Not yet. Not until I get this one. And then I have 2 months.
Alrighty. What the heck was this?
Yeah, yeah. Because Meg saw it and she was like, she tried to get him to defer it because when she came, she was out last week and she saw it and she was like, hey, you know, we should defer it. And so he deferred.
we're missing someone? Oh, okay. Mr. Sutherland, can you call the first appeal? The only appeal.
Yeah, yes, this appeal is, number V-11975-24-APP-1, an appeal by Hunter Schulos, of the zoning administrator's decision to approve expanded housing option permit, pound ZEHO 24 dash 00003 for a lot located in the R6 zoning district on the premises known as 2315 North Tuckahoe Street, the RPC number 01-069-012 in the Arlington East Falls Church Civic Association. Staff recommends that the board adopt the attached proposed resolution affirming the zoning administrator's decision. There is supplemental material for this case that came in after the packet was assembled and printed in the form of a comment form in support of this, and this is from a neighbor, Paige Shelvin, located at 2309 North Tuckahoe Street, 0 feet to the property line. Is next door.
Thank you. Are the parties all present? Why don't you come on down? We have some seats a little closer.
In addition, we do have 6 speakers, 2 before and then 2, 4 before noted on the slide, and then 2 speaker slips that submitted.
2 additional.
During the meeting.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Who do we have representing the sides today? The parties? Go ahead.
Ann Golsky with the County Attorney's Office for the zoning administrator.
Oh, sorry, Arlova Baum, zoning administrator.
Thank you. Why don't you come to the side?
Scott Miller, I'm here on behalf of the owner. And I'm Hunter Sloss, I'm the
Property owner.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I didn't catch your name. I didn't write your name down. Can you, one more time?
Scott Miller.
Scott Miller, thank you.
Yeah, Scott Miller.
Thank you. So for appeals, our process is typically we hear from the county, who has 20 minutes, then we hear from the appellant for 20 minutes, and then the board will ask questions of, thank you, first speakers after, are we doing questions before speakers? Questions before or after? Well, so we'll hear from 20 minutes for each side. We'll hear from the 6 speakers, and then we'll ask questions of anyone has questions of, and then we will discuss and render a decision. Would the county like to present their case? Ms. Golsky. Ms. Vaughn, sorry. I do that every time.
That's okay. It will be very brief.
Thank you.
And I believe we're sharing our time with the...
That's right.
Yeah, okay.
Yep.
So the appeal before you is of an expanded housing options permit issued pursuant to the Arlington County Zoning Ordinance, Article 10.4, on April 25th, 2024, to permit a 6-unit multifamily project on the subject property. The appellant contends that the permit was issued in error and should be revoked. The staff report provided addresses the appellant's arguments in greater detail, but to summarize them briefly here, I'll reinforce that staff believes the subject EHO development permit was issued appropriately because the proposal is compliant with all relevant requirements and standards found in the Arlington County zoning ordinance. The first issue the appellant cites concern with is the proposed landscape plan. The zoning ordinance landscape requirements for EHO development projects include a minimum required number of trees, which varies based on the number of dwelling units proposed. This request includes 6 dwelling units, which requires 8 shade trees. Compliance with this requirement may be met with either the preservation of existing trees or planting new trees, which must be in place prior to the issuance of the certificate of occupancy. While applicants are encouraged to be aware of and plan for placement of these requirements as early as the EHO permit review, approval of the EHO permit as proposed is not inconsistent with the zoning requirement for the provision of 8 trees at CO issuance. The second issue relates to the required screening of trash collection and storage areas. A proposed patio less than 8 inches above grade would accommodate trash cans, and screening would be provided by a fence surrounding the patio. Both the proposed patio and fence meet all ACZO requirements for placement and coverage. The appellant wishes to combine the two structures and require that they be regulated as a single accessory structure, but this is not necessary or appropriate. The patio and fence are proposed as separate structures and have different zoning requirements in the Arlington County zoning ordinance, all of which have been met. The appellant's remaining arguments allege that the subject property is not eligible for EHO development due to its partial location in both the East Falls Church and Langston Boulevard planning districts. Neither is correct. Both planning districts are identified on the general land use plan map, and the subject property is not located in any part within either planning district. In closing, staff recommends that the BZA adopt the proposed resolution affirming the zoning administrator decision to approve the EHO development permit ZEHO 24-00003.
And I would have just one more point that we would add on behalf of the zoning administrator, and that would be that we will adopt the standing argument as stated by the permit holders' supplemental materials.
Thank you. Ms. Malice?
Could you clarify what you just said, what that means?
It might make be a little bit easier once the a permit holders council has set forth the argument, but it's the argument that's set forth in the permit holders response that was filed in your packet that begins on page 2.
And you're saying that you...
We adopt that standing argument as well.
That is your argument as well. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
All right. Good evening, Mr. Chair and members of the board. My name is Scott Miller. I am an attorney at Hirschler Law and here on behalf of the permit holder. I appreciate the time tonight and the opportunity to speak with you all. As mentioned, we filed a response on September 10th outlining our arguments and positions on the various issues raised by the appellant. I will try to keep my remarks brief tonight in light of that. So really there are two sets of issues here. The first being a threshold issue, as mentioned, regarding standing. In order for a party to be considered aggrieved by a decision of the zoning administrator, there's a very specific two-prong test set forth by the Virginia Supreme Court in past case law. The second prong is the one that we'd want to focus in on here, and it's that the appellant needs to state a particularized harm, one that is not shared by the general public. It can't be a harm that is out in the ether. It has to be specific, and they have to demonstrate that harm with facts. The second bucket of issues are the various items outlined by the zoning administrators in the staff report. First, we believe that the applicant has no standing for this appeal, and that the Board of Zoning Appeals can dismiss the appeal outright based upon that alone. I'll touch on that a bit more. And second, even if you disagree with the standing argument, we don't believe that there's any merit in the appeals made by the appellant. So to touch on the standing argument a bit more, I understand that the appellant submitted supplemental briefing, I believe last week, specifying alleged harms that he suffers as a result of this permit, as a result of the issuance of this permit. Again, kind of harping on one of my earlier points, the harm can't be speculative. It has to be particularized. And the fact of the matter is that the harms alleged by the appellant are far too speculative under Virginia case law. Alleging property value loss is not enough. Alleging property value loss for neighbors is also not enough. But again, even if the board does not agree with a standing argument, the sole inquiry of the board tonight is whether the zoning administrator correctly applied the law as set forth in the county zoning ordinance. And as such, given that we believe the zoning administrator was correct in the application of the law, the issuance of that EHO permit should be upheld. And now diving into the actual issues of the appeal, there are three subsets of issues. The first being the on-site tree requirements, the second being the trash and the associated screening with that trash, and the third being the East Fall Church and Langston Boulevard plans as shown on the GLUP. So I'll take these issues in turn. A lot of this you've already heard tonight, but just want to emphasize and drill into these facts in a bit more detail. The on-site tree requirement does not impact the ability of the zoning administrator to issue the EHO permit. The ordinance is very clear that those required trees must be installed before the certificate of occupancy. And importantly, on the face of the EHO, that permit specifically states that the CO is a separate process. And so that's important because the zoning administrator preserves her ability to deny a CO if those requisite trees are not installed. The fact of the matter is that the trees do not come into play yet at this EHO stage. Second subset of issues is regarding the trash area and the fence. And importantly, the EHO permit meets the requisite screening and also meets the lot coverage requirements. As you heard earlier tonight on a separate case, the trash area or a concrete pad under 8 inches, which is the case here at the trash area, is not regulated as a structure under the zoning ordinance. This is a long-standing interpretation in the county, and we saw it in play earlier tonight. The second point here is that the fence is allowed in its current area for screening purposes and is designed to screen the trash area. You'll hear perhaps from the appellant or see in the briefing there are citations to accessory structures in the Fairfax County zoning ordinance, and then I believe also for FEMA. But these have no impact on the Arlington County zoning ordinance and how that is interpreted within this county's ordinance. The applicable law is here. The third subset of issues is whether or not the property is located within a planning district as shown on the GLUP. It's very important for the EHO permitting process because if it is within one of those planning districts, the permit can't be issued. In this case, the East Falls Church plan and Langston Boulevard plan are close, but there is no overlap between the property and those plans. And no overlap is important because even if a portion of the property is located within one of those planning districts, it can't be issued. We've attached those maps to our September 10th response as well, so those should be available to you all. And in light of the foregoing, we just want to again emphasize that the inquiry here tonight is, did the zoning administrator act within the confines of the law in issuing the EHO permit? This is an administrative process of check the box process. If all the boxes are checked, the permit must be issued, and that's the case here. I ask that you please uphold the issuance of the EHO permit. Thank you.
Thank you. The appellant. Now we can.
No.
And they will adjust it as you speak.
Hi, everyone. I'm Hunter Sauce. I'm the appellant, the owner of 2309 Idaho, which is right next to the.
Yeah, we need a little more.
Maybe.
Is it on now?
There you
we
go.
go. Okay.
Green light.
Yeah, there we go. Okay. Hey, everyone. I'm Hunter Sloss. I'm the appellant.
I'm sorry, can we restart the timer? Thank you. Go ahead.
All right, I'll introduce myself again. Hey, I'm Hunter Sloss. I am the appellant. I am the owner of 2309 North Tuckahoe, which is right next to the property in question. First of all, I just want to thank everyone here on the BZA. I know it's been a very long night. Thank you for sticking with it. I also want to thank all of my neighbors behind me who really showed up in force. I did not expect that many to show up and support, and they all have also stuck with it through this very long night. So I just want to thank them for that as well. I'll be spending most of my remarks tonight responding to staff's arguments. I'm not going to really be rehashing what I wrote in my written comments unless everyone wants me to go through that again. I certainly can. But first, let me just touch on the standing piece, because it seems like the other party did not read the other half of what I submitted, which was all about standing. First of all, I do believe I have standing for a couple reasons, which I outlined in my supplemental material that I provided, and I hope everyone read. First of all, BZA is not a court of law. There has been no mention of needing standing to the BZA. The Virginia Code does not require a legal concept of standing for the BZA. The BZA is not a judicial entity. It is a quasi-judicial entity. It says that very explicitly on the website. So it's simply not necessary. Through all other EHO appeals that this board has heard, there has been no mention of denying any sort of argumentation based off standing, and that's the appeal. That's the standard that I'm working off of tonight. But also, I do believe I have standing. Even if you want to say that, okay, well, you need to prove standing. Well, I do have standing. As the other party said, there's a two-prong test. One prong is, do I own property that, right next to the property in question? That is met, obviously. The second prong is whether I can show a particularized harm that is different than the public in general. I actually, in the supplemental material, actually provided 3 particularized harms. And it's interesting just now that from the response you heard, they only talked about 1. So not really sure why that is. Maybe they agree with my other 2 points, but I'll go through them anyway. The first point is that I do allege that my property value has either decreased or will decrease as a result of this EHO permit. That is not mere speculation, by the way. The other EHO appeal that you heard, I think last month or 2 months ago at 2410 North Lincoln Street, who the EHO permit was filed for was the exact same developer as this EHO permit. He did confirm both through county appraisers as well as real estate agents that the property value or his property value had declined. And so it's not speculation. It's actually going off of someone with specific authority and or specific expertise in the matter. Again, not speculative. Also want to point out that both court cases that the other party has brought up to determine standing, I believe, I forget the exact name of those, Anders Larsen's Trust and Friends of Rappahannock, they both say that the issue of standing does not need to actually have happened. It can be a potential harm, not an actual harm. So that does not really hold a lot of weight either. The other 2 reasons I have standing, number 1, I take my kids, I walk them up North Tuckahoe Street to the park, to 2 parks to the school almost every single day, especially because the sidewalk ends at my property. I have to take them in the park. And the increased traffic coming and goings of a multifamily unit are significantly different than a single-family home. Again, those facts of the matter are the same as other facts, other court cases that have been decided that I do have standing. And then the last one is just there's been serious allegations against this developer that they have really been a bad faith actor, especially when it comes to tearing down houses that are built in the 1920s, such as the property in question. There could be asbestos. They have not had a good track record of mitigating asbestos. That's been documented through other appeals that you've heard. And I don't want that coming onto my property. So I do believe I have standing. And then the last argument in my standing documentation was really around how it's just good governance to hear this appeal anyway. The whole reason we have a board like you guys is to have an expertly decided set of opinions on things. I bring up some very novel issues that need to be decided on. This developer has run into the issues of planning districts being denied EHO permits because of planning districts in the past. He wasn't even aware of the East Falls Church Planning District, is my interpretation of those emails between the developer and the county. And so this really needs to be decided just as a matter of good governance principle. So with the standing piece kind of put aside, I'll turn to the other arguments in my appeal. The first one is about trees. First of all, the county alleges that they can wait until the very last step, which is the certificate of occupancy, to actually make sure that the lot is in compliance and has 8 trees. This is a brand new interpretation of the ordinance. The whole purpose of this ordinance was that sometimes trees die during the construction process through no fault of anyone's. And so it doesn't make sense to take a permit that started out in compliance and then it becomes out of compliance to not start over from square one and then redo everything, all the delays. That would make no sense. That's completely reasonable. However, staff is now extending that interpretation to say, well, the permit can be out of compliance and then it can be in compliance later on. That is completely the opposite of how this ordinance has been applied in every other EHO permit up to this point. This also raises some very absurd scenarios if you really think about it. Why do we have a permit process at all if people can just wait till the very end? How can other permits, specifically from the Department of Environmental Services that they need a permit from later on, how can they even get a permit from them if the site plan is knowingly wrong or the landscape plan is knowingly wrong? Doesn't make a whole lot of sense. Moving on to the trash element. County staff's response is that they evaluated both the patio and the fence as separate structures or separate elements. And because of both those elements independently and separately met ordinance code, then that was okay. There's a couple of things that are wrong with this. First of all, take a look at staff's Exhibit 1 again. There's no mention of a fence. The word fence does not appear anywhere in this permit. So what you're basically hearing is that staff applied a standard that simply they should not have. We don't know what is being screened with. There is no mention of a fence. So right on that basis, the permit is incomplete and you can reject on that basis alone. However, let's just keep going, just for the sake of argumentation. Let's believe that the word fence appears somewhere. It still violates side setback requirements. You really do have to evaluate both items combined and not separately. One way to see this is to ask yourself, what is the trash pad requirement in the ordinance? What is it without a fence? Well, according to the ordinance, it's no longer a trash pad. What is the trash pad requirements? What is that structure without a patio? Well, according to the ordinance, it's no longer a trash pad. You have to evaluate them combined. Another way to think about it is ask yourself, what is the purpose of having a fence? Is it for shade? Is it for privacy? Is it for demarcation of the lot? No. What's the purpose of a patio? Is it for enjoyment? Is it for any outdoor activities? No. Both elements, the fence and the patio, only exist to serve the trash use case. Therefore, it is much more appropriate to think of this as a combined structure, not a separate structure. And if you assume that it is a combined structure, then that falls under the side setback requirements that it then violates. But let's go even further. Let's say that the word fence appears in the permit. Let's believe that you think you can evaluate the elements separately. Well, then it still violates side setback requirements, and that is because of the clause in 3.2.6.a.2.b, the clause all expanded housing option development subject to 10.4. This clause applies here because the requirement for screening the trash collection area for R-zone districts exists only in 10.4, and the fence and patio are development solely to satisfy 10.4. Staff's response is completely silent on this point, so I can only assume that they agree with it. If you believe that there are two different clauses...
I'm sorry, can you give me that citation
Yeah,
for what you're reading?
So it's zoning ordinance 3.2.6.a.2.b.
Thank you.
Yep.
Sorry to interrupt.
Yep, no worries. So if you believe that there are two different clauses, both allowing and denying the setback apply, then you still must go with the most restrictive provision, and again, that is according to 1.4.1.a. Lastly, as a reminder, the trash pad, as shown, cannot even be built according to the laws of physics. It overlaps the walkway. How can you approve a permit where the drawings are just wrong? I think this is a pretty fundamental issue. Let's move on to the planning districts. Now, as a reminder, when EHO was marketed to the county, EHO was marketed under the urban planning version of the Hippocratic Oath, do no harm. EHO would do no harm, they said, because setback requirements would be exactly the same, and that was written in the ordinance. EHO would do no harm, they said, because lot coverage requirements would stay exactly the same, and that was written in the ordinance. EHO would do no harm, they said, because previously decided recommendations and agreements on planning districts would remain the same, and that was written in the ordinance, except, of course, when it's inconvenient to the county, I guess. Staff's response is breathtaking in its complete non-responsiveness to my written remarks. They overly focus on geography when I explicitly point out that 10.4.2.a requires much more than a geographic determination, and that this broader meaning was directly intended by the county board using direct quotes. There is no lot that exists in this county where the lot lines are bisected by a planning district boundary. So why would the word partially exist in the ordinance if it functionally serves no purpose according to staff's response? Staff tries to claim, with zero reasoning, that what I claim the county board meant by partially does not comport with logic or common sense. And yet, not only am I merely taking the first definition listed in Merriam-Webster's dictionary, but I also point to specific quotes from county staff in their March 2023 report that discloses exactly what partially means. As a reminder, and as I wrote in my written remarks, it was meant to prioritize all development recommendations contained within approved planning districts. Staff does not dispute my further analysis that there are specific development recommendations, some of which are enshrined in the general land use plan, as I stated in my written remarks, that apply to the lot in multiple planning districts. They're silent on this matter, so if you agree with my definition of partially, you must reject the permit. Staff also remarks that they only take the plain and natural meaning of words and point to a recent court case as support. However, not only is my definition of partially a plain and natural meaning, remember it's the first definition listed in Merriam-Webster's dictionary, but that specific court case also supports my definition. My definition would not be natural as one test if it led to an absurd result. Does it? No. It is not absurd to rule that an ordinance applies to one additional lot. Another test is if the definition led to an internally inconsistent result. Does it? No. The ordinance still works to exempt some lots, but not others as intended. Another test is if the definition renders the ordinance incapable of operation. Does it? Again, no. It still functions appropriately regardless of the outcome of this one lot. The court case that staff cites does give a lot of weight to intent if able to be proven. Again, I have proven the intent of the definition of partially, while staff gives no rebuttal. Even in staff's response, they frame the ordinance incorrectly. They want to ask if the property is within the boundary of the planning district, even though the word boundary appears nowhere in the ordinance, nor does any other geographically derived word. Once again, they're too focused on geography and are blind to the whole meaning. And for these reasons, you must reject the permit. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up, we will hear from our speakers. Is Mr. Miller present?
Sorry, that was me.
Oh, sorry. We heard from Mr. Miller. Is Ms. Sasser present? It'll turn on, I think. It should turn on. It's been turning on for, there it goes.
Okay.
Can you
I
state
have-
your relationship to?
Yes, my name is Janet Sasser. I am a neighbor. I'm also a 13-year member of Arlington Regional Master Naturalists. I am at the top of Tuckahoe, at the top of the hill, so I look straight down Tuckahoe Street.
Thank you.
This is exactly a 2-minute piece, so I'm going to launch into it.
Please.
I have found in 48 years I have lived in Arlington that the county often operates under the following principle. It gives with one hand and takes with the other. An example is the sponsorship of the Tree Canopy Fund, which generously offers nice-sized native trees to property owners that are planted for them. That is the giving hand. Then the county allows the wholesale destruction of mature canopy trees by developers such as on this property. All the mature trees, including a huge American holly in the front yard, will be replaced with very young trees. The existing tree canopy, in significant amounts, adds oxygen to the atmosphere, pulls pollutants out of the air, holds the line against erosion, provides food and shelter for wildlife, and absorbs stormwater runoff, a particular concern on this downhill parcel. It will take decades for the new trees to match the benefits of their predecessors. This practice is the taking hand. The two-handed principle is at work in yet another aspect of this project because it does not adhere to the minimum requirement to plant 8 shade trees. The county's giving hand is the actual requirement to place 8 large trees on the site. The taking hand is the staff's excuse for allowing the siting of only 7 on the landscape plan. That is, the 8th tree need not show up until the issuance of a certificate of occupancy. This technicality and the careless wording of the ordinance fails to consider that a shade tree requires an ample amount of space to grow to maturity and then to thrive. The result of excluding the 8th tree from this dense landscape plan now is that either it will fail to be properly accommodated and thus die, or it will never be planted at all, both violations ultimately of the on-site tree requirement. Thank you.
Thank you. Can you bring that slide back up? Mr. Kretek?
Yes.
I'm having trouble seeing, so.
Yeah, I'll try to make this quick because I know time is limited for me, and I want to talk about our harms that aren't just up in the ether.
Can you state your relationship?
Yeah, my name's Joseph Craddock, and my wife and I own 6550 24th Street North, which is located behind and one lot north of the subject property. We lived in this address for 13 and a half years. Over the time, a lot has changed in the neighborhood. For example, the nearby SunTrust Historic Bank was torn down, built up a large tract of townhomes. With all these changes, I've been basically what you could say, someone who doesn't want to prejudge things and just go with the flow. It's nothing I felt strongly enough. And I guess you can say that I really don't say anything, and this goes to general statement, unless something's beyond all reason. So when my wife told me, and she found out about this because of the appeal, that a commercial developer had bought 2313, basically swooping up within an hour after it went on sale, and they were planning to build a 6-unit commercial residence, I said exactly that this is not remotely reasonable based on the actual location we're talking about here. And I take walks every day in my neighborhood, and I can tell you that most of the streets are virtual boulevards compared to the portion of Tuckahoe where 2315 is located. These streets have sidewalks, plenty of space to park on both sides, with generous room for two-way traffic. This is a picture of the street we're talking about, 2015. No sidewalks, narrow, just any kind of commercial vehicle, it's difficult to navigate. I have plenty of ones we're talking about. This is the typical street in the neighborhood. You're talking about sidewalks, parking on both sides, generous for two-way or even three-way traffic. Other pictures as well. And they were talking about this is what we're talking about here. This is the locations we're dealing with. Now, 2015 is located on a narrow street without difficulty parking.
10 seconds.
Now, I note that the paperwork in the online docket for the zoning challenge doesn't even show a full picture of the developer's plan. Maybe the plan is to include a multi-story parking garage, I don't know, though such an idea seems preposterous as far as integrating this proposed structure into the rest of the immediate area. Now, counsel for the developer has not made and frankly cannot make any positive characterizations about the issue I raised. For them, this is something they need not address, and frankly, I'm sure they're crossing their fingers right now that you completely ignore it. And presumably they'll say it's not part of the confined limited rule they argue that this board is having.
Thank you. Thank you for your comments.
Okay. Thank you.
Ms. Melchiori, thank you.
I'm Teresa Melchiori. I'm his wife. I'm at 6550 24th Street, North Arlington, Virginia. As my husband indicated, this is an extremely narrow street. So in order to park on this street, which by the way is illegal at the moment, you have to park over partially on the asphalt and then over a gully where there's a lot of water that goes down, and then you're on land. A lot of school kids come up this street. A lot of people come up this street to go to the park in order to walk their dogs. There's a family of 5 that live around the corner. Adele will be speaking that she walks her children up the street. As you can see, when you come up, there's a tennis court here. People come up all the time. If you go around the corner, which this was not big enough, we have a ton of traffic that comes up to cut through to get through to 66th Street rather than wait on 29 to go to Langston Boulevard and then turn, because they go around to get faster. So there's a ton of traffic coming through there. There's dog walkers, there's exercisers. This is Tuckahoe Elementary School right here. This is the playground. These are the tennis courts. The parking situation is that the teachers park back here because Tuckahoe Elementary lost their parking lot to permanent, semi-permanent buildings. So there's only a little tiny parking lot. So there's no parking here. There are several Arlington classes that they have here, and this regularly fills up. Down the street, if you look down the street of 29th Street, of course, do I have everything organized for my 2 minutes? Not really. If you look down these streets, they're fairly narrow, and there aren't any sidewalks on most of them. They fill up down by Stewart Park for everybody who comes for
10
soccer.
seconds.
And then sometimes the cul-de-sac also fills up because people use the baseball fields and the soccer fields right next to Tuckahoe Elementary. So it may look bucolic, it isn't really, but we have a lot of physical traffic, people walking, a lot of children, and this particular lot empties out to one of the lowest, more muddier parts of the watershed. We've just had 9 baby foxes born, you know? There's a lot of animals going through. It's not well lit at all. I have to tell you, my father was a blue-collar worker. My husband's father was a blue-collar worker. Why can't you just build a twin and put the parking in there? We'd welcome you. We don't have any problems with that. What about 3 with the parking in there? 3-row houses?
Thank you for your
That's
comments.
the missing middle.
Thank you for your comments. Mr. Sutherland, can you call our next speaker? I don't have the list.
Yes, the next speaker I have is Margaret Newman.
Good evening.
My name is Margaret Newman. I am a longtime resident of Arlington County. I live just around the corner from 2315 North Tuckahoe Street in the cul-de-sac right beside Tuckahoe Park. It's the home I grew up in. I'm here in support of the appeal to overturn the decision by the zoning administrator approving the ZHO permit for a 3-story, 6-unit building on that property. I have 2 points. First, the zoning administration position is that the property falls outside of the East Falls Church Planning District, and therefore the exception to the EHO provisions of the code do not apply. In taking this position, the zoning administration has discarded from consideration, they've ignored the key elements of the East Falls Church Plan, which is the basis for the establishment of that district. These elements include preserving nearby existing single-family neighborhoods and ensuring that new buildings are compatible and transition appropriately to such single-family neighborhoods. Approving this permit would send a signal to our community that the vision and the objectives of the East Falls Church Plan, as set forth in the general land use plan of this county, are meaningless words and have no purpose. It creates a conflict between the code and the GLUB that is too great to ignore or be glossed over. Secondly, one of the purposes of the EHO provisions is to preserve and enhance valued neighborhood features, including walkability. Now, our area, as mentioned, is adjacent to Tuckahoe Park and Tuckahoe Elementary School. So preserving walkability and ensuring safe streets for all is critical. There's already a high mix of cars and pedestrians, including young children, who use these streets daily. Putting a 6-unit building with only 3 parking spaces on that property on a street that has no sidewalk and little curbing will dangerously increase automobile traffic, putting pedestrians' safety and people's lives at risk. This is the antithesis of preserving and enhancing neighborhood walkability. I respectfully request that this board find in favor of the appellant. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments.
Before I call the next speaker, I would ask that no comments be put in the chat, please. Only request for technical assistance. Thank you. The next speaker we have is Todd Newman.
Is this the last speaker?
No, we have one more speaker after this.
Hello, I'm Todd Newman, and I'm a neighbor on Tuckahoe Street. First, good evening, and thank you, Chairman Kaplan and members of the board, for hearing us. We've seen plats and Google Earth views, but again, I want to remind you of what this street looks like. There's no sidewalk, there are no curbings, and this street, right down here, is right off of Langston Boulevard. As mentioned, people come through this section of North Tuckahoe Street as cut-throughs to Tuckahoe Elementary School, Bishop O'Connell High School, and the on-ramp to I-66. This 6-unit proposal provides only 3 parking spots. Where will those cars be parked? Parking on this street will make an already narrow street even more narrow. This puts pedestrians, particularly school children going to Tuckahoe Elementary School, at danger. A crowded, narrow, busy street without any sidewalks and more parked cars puts our children in peril. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next speaker is Adele Nelson. And this is the final speaker.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Hi, good evening. My name is Adele Nelson, and I live at 2320 North Tuckahoe Street, which is directly across the street from the dwelling in question. I've owned my home since 2011, and I live there with my 3 children, who I walk up and down Tuckahoe Street every day. I am devastated that the application for this proposed dwelling has gotten this far, and what I would urge each of you, if there's any time, is to think about the pictures that you've seen, but also if this does go on for, from this evening, go and see this space. This plan does not make sense, not in this space and not on this street. The 2300 block of North Tuckahoe Street is about 350 feet long, and from Langston Boulevard to a T intersection at an 8% grade where it ends at 24th Street North. The average width of this tiny stretch of road is 20 feet, which is barely enough room for 2 small vehicles to pass safely. If this is proposed and accepted, how are we thinking about if there's fire and rescue teams that need to come, what kind of access are they going to have? There is not a safety plan that will be in place. This street currently has 8 single-family homes with a combined residence of 16 people. The proposed dwelling has 6 units, each containing 3 bedrooms. This could potentially add a total of 36 new residents to our street. Now, that may be the worst-case scenario, but there's no way that that this street can handle even an increase of a quarter of that. There are 3 parking spaces. 36 cars, 3 parking spaces. It doesn't work. If this proposal is approved, it will change the face of our tiny street and create a logistical and environmental nightmare for those of us who call this neighborhood home, and for me, across the street. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. So we have about 15 minutes left. And I know I have a bunch of questions for staff. I don't know if anyone else has questions.
Mr.
But for
Chair.
time for discussion. Ms. Malice.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I don't know about the board and about staff and the attorneys, if they would be willing to carry over the discussion and action on this item to next Wednesday.
I'd have to consult my client first before agreeing to that, if you don't mind. And I'm not sure what the county stance is on that.
We may not be able to get through our questions and come to a decision tonight.
We're getting kicked out of this room in
We
about
have
12
to
minutes.
yeah, we have a hard deadline here.
I mean, I'll be here next week anyway.
Okay.
That's true.
We all have to come back next week, no matter
We're all
what.
back anyway for next week on our sides.
Okay. Here, hold on just one moment.
And I just want to suggest that if we do that, we close the public hearing.
Yes.
So that speakers don't
That's right.
come back and
Thank you.
talk again.
Yes, thank you for that. Ms. McGrusky. Yeah. I mean, I will go ahead and close the public hearing portion of this now. We've heard from all the parties and all of the speakers. So it's with the board for questions.
I just have a question. If you carry the meeting, this case over, the comments and the remarks that we made this evening, how will they be recorded?
They're recorded. This meeting will be is recorded and will be posted online.
Thank you.
And we will, it's just continued. It's as if we never took a pause.
Okay, thank you.
I spoke with my client, and we'd like to continue to the extent that we can tonight, understanding, we may be kicked out at 11, but that's the position we are at.
We have to be out of the building by 11, so it's not that we might be kicked out. We're about to be kicked out.
We need time to exit the building.
Okay, all right. Well, yeah, sounds like there's not really an option. We'll go ahead and move to next week then.
So
Appreciate that.
I will, what, this is Randolph? No, this is not Randolph.
You will defer discussion to.
What's the case number? In fact, I have it up here. Never mind. So having closed the public hearing, I seek unanimous consent to continue the questioning of the parties and a discussion with the board to our carryover date on September 25th. 25th? This will be the first item, yes. This will be the first item because it's still open. And this is the matter of V-11975-24-APP-1. Yes, I mean, this will be streamed online as well. I mean, just like a normal meeting.
Yeah, so if you don't wish to attend, you can watch remotely, like other people are doing right now.
Yeah, I'll be here next week, so it's fine.
Hearing no objection, so scheduled.
Meeting is,
Do we want, we have minutes.
you want to do the minutes?
You want to do the minutes real quick?
I move that we adopt the August 2024 minutes as presented.
A motion by Ms. Malice, seconded by Ms. Freshman for the adoption of the August minute as posted. I will call the roll. Ms. Malice? Aye. Ms. Freshman? Aye. Ms. Clark?
Aye.
Ms. McCroskey?
Aye.
Chair abstains. The motion passes 4-0 to 1. We are, yes, having finished our agenda that we haven't continued till next week, this meeting is adjourned.